Alrighty, welcome everyone to the Matchmaker with LeTisha Underwood, and today I am simulcasting. So I okay. So had a little hiccup with my audio. So I am simulcasting between Clubhouse and YouTube. So click the link up top to come over to YouTube because this room on Clubhouse will not be open for too long. It's just to let you guys know that I am over on YouTube having this discussion. Today we're going to discuss why marriage under 30 is more important than over 30. And I know that's hard to hear because a lot of people are probably like, wait, no, that's too young. You're too young to get married at that age. You need to really understand who you are, live life a little bit, and live life and gain some understanding about yourself. And the only way that you can do that is if you are not focused on marriage at a certain age. So I'm here to have that conversation. So again, if you're on Clubhouse watching this, click the link up top, watch it on YouTube so that you don't miss the actual entire conversation, right? So I really want to speak to women under 30 because I think they need to understand more than ever why it is important for them to focus on marriage now. Like in the 90s, early 2000s, there was this big push for women to delay marriage, and it seemed to work. And it seemed fine that men were open to marrying later. But what happened was women were actually pushing marriage off more and more. Then women were out on the dating market longer, and then women started picking up behaviors, habits, and attributes that became less desirable to men. So who men are actually going to end up choosing to marry in the long run, it will not be older women, right? The older you get, the more difficult it becomes. Once you get past 35, marriage becomes a lot more difficult. So I think it will do women who are 30 and under, start looking for your husbands now. Does that mean you have to get married at 20, 21, 22? No. But you should be on the market of marriage, the marriage market, and not the dating market, not the, sexual market. But you should be looking at trying to find, match up with somebody for the purpose of a long-term relationship. It's healthier. It's better for your well-being, your mental health, and your overall desire for marriage will be it's easier to accomplish, because let's just face it, that is the prime. That is a woman's prime, right? You can have as many children as you desire. You can have as many children as you desire. You can have you're more likely to grow with someone. You'll have the patience, you'll have the wherewithal, you'll have the desire to grow with someone, versus getting in your 30s and then you're wanting to have this rich, very successful guy, this guy who has all this money, who can give you the lifestyle to which you're accustomed to. Because let's just face it, I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and he pointed out that, women may be living, they may be making $50,000 a year, but they're living at $70,000 a year because of credit cards. So you're looking at a man who is going to be able to come in and take off that burden. So he's got to make well above that $70,000 lifestyle that you're living. And so he's got to make significant more. Well, those men who are making significant more are looking for more in a woman. So if you are 30, so if you are if you're under 30, the way that the trends are going, marriage is becoming less and less desirable for men and for women. I just want to put that out there. But I think women still overall will desire marriage more so than men will. But for the women who do want marriage, you're going to be looking at less and less men who are going to be desiring marriage. So the older you get, the harder it gets. I'm telling you, as someone who is over 30 and well past 30, dating is not easy. Getting married, you're having less and less at that age group, less and less men who want to get married. So, Lady Yoko, it's not necessarily about them wanting someone to pay their bills. It's the lifestyle that they're at, that they believe that they're at. So if she's making $50,000 a year, but she's got credit cards and all that other stuff, and she's got a nice place. She probably bought her own home. She has a really nice car. The lifestyle that she is living would be that of someone making significant more money, so 70,000, 80,000. So unfortunately, a lot of women, when they get into a relationship, they don't want to carry on that burden by themselves, or they don't want that to stop. So they're looking for a man who can take on that financial burden and give them the life and take on that lifestyle for them, or someone who is not going to detract. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of men out here that's making $80,000. There just isn't. So if he's making 50,000, she's making 50,000. She is looking at him like he doesn't make enough money. Rose Flo says, getting married under 30 has not worked out for my peers. I didn't say, okay, so it depends on how old your peers are. And then it also comes down to your family, how much family support you have. It's not marriage that's the problem. It's how women go about getting married. Like, are you getting married for the purpose of you want to add to someone's life and you want to grow with them and you want the companionship? Or are you getting married, for status, to say you got married? You're getting married because you want a lifestyle. Those are not good reasons to get married. Having unreasonable and unrealistic expectations can hurt you at any age. But what I'm saying is that if you want to get married, your best bet is to start looking at getting married at a younger age. That doesn't mean at 22 you got to pop up and get married. No. But you should be focused on having a long-term committed relationship. You should only deal with marriage-minded men who actually themselves want to get married. They want to start families. Okay, Rose. So Rose says, I'm in my late 20s. The majority of my friends that got married between the age of 21 to 26 are currently divorcing or separated, my generation. Okay, so Rose, at what age do you see yourself getting married, if you want to get married, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what age do you see yourself getting married? Because even though you see a lot of people, okay, so 31, 34, what type of man do you see yourself marrying? Okay, so you're with him now. Okay, that's different. You're in a relationship. You're doing exactly what I said that women should do, is to focus on being in a relationship. So the conversation is not necessarily jumping into marriage in your early 20s and your 20s. No, being more marriage minded and building a relationship while you're in your 20s, so that when you, by the time you hit your 30s, the both of you are ready to settle down. The both of you are ready to start your family and have children. The worst thing a woman can do is forego relationships and not be serious about marriage until she's in her 30s. It just makes it so much more difficult. Okay. I can't have this conversation with y'all in the chat. I'm trying to simulcast from two different streams. So either y'all gonna come over on to Clubhouse, come over to YouTube and join me on the panel. You don't have the camera up. I'm on camera, but you don't have the camera up. Because I can't run my show and talk to y'all in the chat. I kind of want to turn the chat off. But I would love for you guys to join me on YouTube. Yeah, this is over on YouTube. So I'm going to drop the link. Hold on. There's the link. You guys come on over YouTube. You don't have to cam up and let's have the conversation. Because I cannot look at the camera and look at the chat and have this conversation. I'm only having this conversation on Clubhouse to get you guys to come over to YouTube. So once the panel actually gets here, I'm waiting for the rest of my people to get here to join the panel. Once they get here, I'm shutting down the Clubhouse room. So guys better hop on over here while you can. But again, it's so let me ask you, do you guys think that you develop the most appealing, do you think a woman has the most appealing attributes when it comes to marriage and being a wife in her 20s or in her 30s? Put it in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if you think that she is the most appealing when she's in her 20s when it comes to marriage and being a wife. And put a 2 in the chat if you think that she's more appealing for marriage when she's in her 30s. Hello, British. How are you today? Are you there? I can't hear you, British.
Helps if I unmute, right?
Yes, there you are. Why is it when you popped in, everyone left?
Who left?
Yes, I was looking at, I had about 7 people watching and you popped in and now it's down to 2 people.
That was nothing to do with me.
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm tired, actually.
Tired of this conversation or just tired?
I think I'm tired of the conversation.
Well, you should give up. I told you. It's not worth saving.
I know, but it's so hard to the thought of just giving up and just like, you know what, let them eat cake. I've been saying that for like years. I'm like, okay, just let them eat cake. I just can't stick to it.
There's no incentives for marriage, so what's the point?
None at all. For men and women or for
What's the incentive? What's the
well,
incentive now for a woman?
children.
No, that's not. You can clearly have children without marriage. So what's the point?
Well, for the women who don't want to have children out of wedlock, it's going to be children.
Yeah, but how many of those women actually exist? It's become normalized for a woman to.
Hello, Manuel.
Hello.
From the
What's up, brother?
Perspective Channel.
I'm in the building.
Thank you for joining us. We're discussing marriage.
Yes.
Today's topic is why marriage under 30 is more important than over 30. British is saying that. See, I feel the same way. British is saying that marriage, there's no incentive to marriage.
Mhm.
So,
For a average guy and an average woman, there is no longer an incentive for marriage.
Um, for an average guy and an average woman, if they don't, there are some ifs that go along with that. Because you can be average across the board, but from my observation, it's the lack of guidance that a lot of young couples have. I was one of those young couples, and with every single box that we checked, and we lasted longer than the average. We lasted 15 years. With
What's the
every
average,
box
by
that
the way?
the average that a couple under 20 divorces in about 7 years on average.
It's even
On
less
average.
incentive than I thought. I didn't even know that.
So we doubled that, because I can tell you the 7 years, that's a milestone, and there's a lot that happens. The 7 year itch. I don't want to go deep into that, but I would say that it's the lack of guidance that a lot of young couples have, which is why those relationships don't last, and why they tend to not benefit either of the two joining in. So I think you just need the guidance if you're in that young marriage, if you're a young couple.
The problem is that while you're right, if you're someone who wants marriage and who's been brought up to want marriage, if you have not been brought up to want marriage, there is no incentives to be married. Because the only incentive to be married is if you have been brought up to want marriage in the first place. If that's not your story, it's irrelevant. And if you get
So
rid of that brainwashing of you should be married, then there is no incentive to be married in the current structure. And I'm saying this as a man who loves the idea of marriage and will be married to one woman.
I think the problem is that if you're not brought up to want marriage, it's not that you can't benefit, it's that you don't understand the benefits. You're not aware of what the benefits are. Across the world, there are three ways. To this day, there are three ways, and I like to just talk numbers. Let's just talk money. There's three ways to get above that threshold that we called lower middle class, and lower middle class, and next. Three ways, still three ways. One, you inherit it. That's the quickest, fastest, most efficient means. You inherit it. Two, you're a woman and you marry a man that already has it, whether he earned it or inherited. Three, you're a couple and you know how to economically navigate and use two incomes to propel yourself into that next level. So those all come by way of marriage. Because anybody inheriting anything ain't inheriting nothing from people that weren't married. And any
I,
woman that's so like
I would argue that every man who has been married, who has now been divorced, would probably say people, like you said, people don't know the advantages of marriage. Every man would argue you don't know the disadvantages of marriage. Disadvantages of marriage far outweigh the benefits of marriage for the average guy now, especially a guy who's not already successful and can't afford the team that you need to protect yourself in marriage, in the predatory marriage environment that we're in right now. Like, for example, in the United Kingdom, right? This happened 2 days ago. The Crown Prosecution Service came out. This is the overarching body that decides whether a criminal case should be prosecuted or not. They came out and said if you are someone who has been, for example, married to, let's say I pick a wife and I get married to her, we have children, we build a family, etc., etc. 5, 10, 15 years later, she decides that she no longer wants to be my wife, she wants to be my husband. And if I refuse to fund her transition, operate, process, whatever the fuck, excuse my language, it pisses me off, this thing. So if I refuse to fund that for her and I refuse to buy into her insanity and not call her my husband, then I can be I can have a domestic abuse case filed against me and it will be prosecuted.
So okay, so that's
So now it's like not only do you have the financial disincentive, not only do you have the disincentive of have your children being taken away from you, you now have the disincentive of being criminally prosecuted because of mental illness.
okay. So I don't like to bring in fringe rare circumstances like a woman that decides she wants to be your husband. That's so fringe and so less than 1% on the
What
probability
about
scale.
pronouns? What about, well,
Wait, hold on,
it's not less than 1%. That's
hold,
an unfair no, that's an unfair argument because
but it's
5 to 10 years ago, 3% of people in university said that they were identified as LGBTQ. Now it's 25%.
no. I'm not talking about LGBT. I'm sticking to the woman that's going to in her marriage tell her husband that I'm transitioning and now I want to be referred to as your husband. That I can somebody Google those that's a far-reaching possibility.
Right
But
now,
I don't
right
but
now.
right. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want to address another point that you made. That's a good point. There are the financial burdens and the things that can happen if a marriage ends that it scares men. I don't know anything about the United Kingdom and what goes on there. I do know, as a man who's been divorced, I've now remarried. I have several peers, and I've seen more diverse divorce documents than the average person because it's something that I do for a living. And I can only talk about the United States, and I can only advise on this. If you are a man in the United States of America, stop being lazy and being unwilling to understand how the court system works. See, men, the problem that men have is that they already go into it thinking the decks is already stacked against me. If I can invite quite a few men on this that have success, and I say successfully divorced, when I say successfully divorced, meaning you get a fair transition from married to single. Having your children taken away is not what normally happens. Everybody is going to go through a custody arrangement. Do the children stay with the mother or the father? Nowadays, in this current climate, that is a conversation. That is a mediation. That is not a locked-in thing that when you get divorced, your children are going to just be taken away. But there's so many factors that play in. If you get divorced let me just say, you get divorced in a state and your children are of school age and they're all in school and you are the husband, you get divorced and you say, well, I want to move. I want to change states. Is it in the best interest of the children to then follow you and then you pull them out of school, you remove them from their environment and you change states in the divorce?
Yes.
What you may have to consider as the man, do you want to stay in your children's lives and do you want to have what is a 50-50% situation? Co-parenting, 50-50, we both are the parents of these children. We both get equal time. In order to attain that, you have to get geographic stability in your divorce. And men are now learning to go and ask for that. They say, hey, I want a geographic restriction. I can tell you for a fact, this is not something I'm guessing. My wife right now was married before. There was 100-mile restriction when she got a divorce. For her to move when we got married, for her to take her son from that marriage and relocate to where I lived, she had to jump through some hoops because you just can't do it. So I'm saying that men need to educate themselves on the system because there are lots of things that actually work for you. But the fear that nothing works for you keeps you just saying, well, get a divorce, we get married, and it's going to take it all.
I can agree.
So Manuel, you made a great point, right? Because we're talking about there's no incentives.
Mm-hmm.
But he made a great point as to how there is an incentive. Because yes, now, like prior to like 80s, 90s, a woman could just divorce you and take the kids wherever. Now she can't. Like if you get, and then even in some states where legal rights have been established, parenting has been established, even if you're not married, a woman just can't up and take the kids, right? It's easier to do it through divorce because it's already set. You've already gone through the system. Um, so she can't. So that when you say that that would be an incentive that hey, if you marry her and y'all have a family, if she decides that she wants to move elsewhere because she is now with someone else, she cannot do that because we the divorce decree says she can't do it. The divorce settlement says she can't do it.
Yeah, so
and
now marriage is good now because you get less screwed over than you were getting screwed over.
see
That's,
and see
that's the
and
argument that you guys have.
hold on, wait.
Very
Hold on,
British.
wait. Hold on, wait. See, I don't know. Again, I only know what the state here in the States. I can't argue for that. It has gotten to the point now where in Georgia, if you get a divorce, women are no longer stay-at-home wives. The majority of women are not stay-at-home mothers. So let's get this idea of spousal support, alimony. It's not a thing. It's not a thing for the average. And if we're talking about the average, what happens is you divorce, y'all sell the home,
Mhm.
y'all split the proceeds, y'all talk about custody arrangements. You may have to pay child support if they don't live with you full time. Here's the kicker. If y'all are splitting the children 50-50, time down the middle, there is no child support.
Mhm.
The divorce documents will read joint custody, equal parenting. They both live with both of you. There is no child support because you both maintain your home. Now, if at any point one of you becomes the sole provider and the parent, divorce kicks in. And not divorce, child support kicks in. And it goes both ways. If the mother says, hey, I need the ex-husband can take these children full time in Georgia, they will then say, ma'am, since he's now the full-time parent, we need you to kick in some child support. And goes so what I'm saying is things are changing in the way that, and I don't know about men always being screwed over. I know that men have been screwed over in situations, especially when women are predatory in marriage and divorce and so on. So I'm not negating that, but let's talk predatory. The worst case scenarios for the average is child support and some sort of arrangement in custody that he doesn't agree with. That's the worst case scenario for the average. It ain't alimony, and it's not spousal support. The average man, no, because everybody nowadays in these high densely populated areas, men are working and women are working, so women don't even have an argument to go to the court and say, give me spousal support. And don't hit me with no fringe shit like celebrities. We're not going to discuss celebrities. They're not in this. We're not going to discuss
Well,
the
right.
millionaires and
To your,
billionaires. Regular people.
to your point, right? Child support, the worst case scenario being child support in custody, that happens even if you're not married.
Even if. So what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna just stop reproducing? We're gonna have a bunch of legacy-less males in the world. Like, what are y'all? So no
Yeah, I mean
children, no marriage.
that is exactly what is happening, and that's throughout history. That's typically what has happened.
So
Why did it happen? I know why it
Well,
happened in the
because
United States.
throughout the history of the entire world, around 80% of women have reproduced, and only 40% of men have reproduced. So 60% of men throughout the entirety of human history have been legacy-less men, and they've disappeared into the darkness of history. In the United States, it's different. In the history of the United States, 60% of men have reproduced. And so, what I think is going on, when I was telling LeTisha why these conversations are suddenly very, very popular, is because in I don't know what your background is, but in finance, there's something, and maths, we call it reversion to the mean, where if we've got an entire average going on for the entirety of human history, and that says that 40% of men have reproduced, but the United States has been tracking above that historic average. Well, at
You're
some
saying it's
point,
going to come back.
it's got to come back and meet it. So now the difference is that those men before just used to go and die quietly. Now those men have the opportunity to moan about it on social media, right? And that's why these conversations are kicking up. That's why there's a lot of anger. Women are also in a completely different financial incentivized situation. A woman who's earning $50,000 a year can use her credit cards because women own 70% of US consumer debt. Women can she can earn $50,000 a year and use her credit card to give herself $150,000 a year lifestyle. And as a result of that, no man, if a man is just meeting 150,000, which I believe LeTisha already puts him in the top 12%, right?
Correct.
If he's doing 150,000, she has no incentives because my life's not going to get any better by dealing with this man's BS because I already have the lifestyle of 150,000. Even though she doesn't understand, she's using credit cards and building herself into debt. So she now needs a guy who's making $350,000 a year, $400,000 a year to even feel stimulated enough for it to make sense to give up the lifestyle that she wants to give up. So she has no incentive to actually behave in a marriage. He has no incentive because the guy who actually makes that amount of money doesn't want to put up with a woman like that, and he doesn't need to. So now the guys that are making up to $150,000 a year are completely inadequate and irrelevant to that woman who's making 50 a year. That's the scary part. It's the financial incentives.
Now look, man, that we get into the weeds of some stuff. See, this is where we get back to, if you haven't been raised to value marriage, you don't even know what to do with that.
Great.
So me coming from where I come from, I know how to navigate that entire thing. One, you gotta, people in general, men definitely need to. You gotta vet for the consumer mindset. Now we're in a consumer culture, so it's not hard to miss the consumer mindset. If you get with a woman who is a pure consumer and she is cultured, like heavily cultured as a consumer, there's really nothing you can do to break that. You can't convince that woman to not, me and LeTisha talked about this. You can't convince a woman that lives in Miami to say, hey, let's move to Louisville where my dollars go further, your dollars go further, or you can just stay at home and I can take care of it all. You can't convince a woman from that part of our culture to move to where it's even financially beneficial for her to let a man take it over. But also, we don't even look at the advantages of, we don't even know the advantages of that. A lot of men and women don't know the advantages of a woman staying at home to raise the children for the earlier part of their development. That we're so far removed from that you almost need a reconditioning. And again, so it's not that marriage isn't beneficial. We just don't know the benefits. A lot of people just don't know the benefits.
Right. And so you yourself, right? You've been married before, divorced, and you remarried. Why did you remarry? Like, what was it about marriage that made you say, you know what, I'm gonna try it again? Sure, I got a divorce. It didn't work out
Did
the
you
first.
did you have a Christian upbringing?
Yes. So
Yeah.
let me I observed marriage.
Hold on, and wait. What generation are you?
I was born in 81.
So
Now,
you're millennial. You're
now
the
hold
beginning of
on. Now,
millennial.
but let me give some context to being born in 81.
Okay.
My father is 72,
So your
and my
father,
grandparents and my grandfather would have been 104, and my grandmother would have been, no, my grandfather would have been 107 if he was still alive, and my grandmother would be 102. So I come from old stock. I come from so one thing we got to think about, when you're born, who raised you? What generation were they? Okay, so I was raised by a boomer who was raised by the silent generation, and the silent generation, they are still, my aunts and uncles, they're still very present. So I have all these examples of marriage, and I've had all these conversations of marriage, and I've had, and so when I got married, We checked a lot of the boxes, but we had what I like to call young couples arrogance. In this day and age, being a young couple, y'all got children together, y'all are thriving financially, your career is going, y'all look good together. You can get very arrogant when you look at the baby mamas and the baby daddies and the other people that are not on your level. You can get so arrogant to then believe that you don't need guidance. You don't need to listen to anybody because, hey, y'all the married young couple and y'all doing well. So that's where we were. Of course, we started to drift apart because we didn't know how to keep this thing cultivated. And so I didn't recognize this in my marriage at that time. It wasn't until we divorced, maybe a couple of years following the divorce, I kind of was like, not a couple, it was when we separated. We separated, and I was like, hell with it, I'll never get married again. Because I was happy in my going into my bachelor phase. And then when I sat and thought about it, I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Was it the marriage or was it us? And so that's when I started having conversations with my elders again. And I started realizing, damn, we were so far removed from guidance that we couldn't navigate those troubled waters. And the thought of even getting a marriage counselor when you're young and arrogant, I don't need counseling. She just needs to listen. I don't need counseling. He just needs to listen. So when you can look back and assess that for what it was, you realize going forward, well, damn, maybe I need to just go ahead and get this marital counselor. Me and my wife now, we got our marital counselor like the moment we got married. We had our premarital counseling then. And so the guidance, we knew we needed the guidance. And so for me, it was not the institution of marriage. It was the participants in the marriage. So I figured, hey, I get with the right participant, I'm going to be fine. You know, and listen, man, I've observed old people when they're together with somebody that they've been, and it's a beautiful goddamn thing. It is literally a beautiful thing to see some crusty old dude and this feminine, maybe kind of feisty old lady, and they're just gorgeous, and then they're wise and they're happy and they don't have a trauma bonded story. Like everybody has these stories of trauma and disappointment along the way. And I wasn't raised around that. So that motivated me to say, man, look, I can get it right. And I was still relatively young at the time that I met my wife. Huh?
Is your wife also got a Christian upbringing?
She does.
Yeah, so this is what I said to LeTisha. If a woman does not have an upbringing where marriage was incentivized beyond um, her own thinking, right? Like marriage wasn't pressured, so to say, then you should just discard her immediately.
I would
Because because all of the trillions of dollars of incentives going in the other direction to brainwash her, you're not going to be able to fight against unless you are an anomaly.
I do think I'm going to agree with you there. I'm going to agree that yeah, she has to come from a world that promotes. Yeah, she has to come. If you're vetting a woman, if you want to be a married man and you're vetting a woman and she doesn't come from that background upbringing, bro, you might be doing yourself a big disservice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I have no pushback on that.
It's like trying to believe that a 35-year-old woman is now suddenly interested in marriage when conveniently she's now interested in marriage at the same time that her ovaries are screaming. She's not interested
right.
She's not interested in the marriage, she's interested in the baby. And she thinks because at least this generation, right, the women that are now 35, at least in that generation, they have the modicum of belief that you should have a baby in marriage if you can. What about the next generation that's coming up past that? They don't care.
Right. No, I believe, man. Go ahead.
So this gets us to, I want to ask Mr. Perspective here. Should it be more important to marry under 30 than it is to wait until over 30?
So, man, here it gets really dangerous when a woman tries to play with that biological clock. It gets dangerous. And listen, I don't care about what any woman thinks, heard, read, or what's said about women can pop out babies after 30 or in their late 30s and 40s. It doesn't work like that. Any study show they don't work like that.
It
So you
does
got to be
if you have $200,000 to spend on IVF. It will
absolutely, yeah. If you have the money and resources, but it doesn't. Even if you have the money, the conditions. See, I have children, 3. The conditions, people never talk about that. People just talk about, oh, you get your other age and you get down, settle down, you have sex, and the baby can. Do you realize, like, stress, anxiety, a schedule, rest, the physical and emotional, and all this? A baby isn't just made just out of 2 people just having sex and wanting a baby. It's the conditions too. And if you're over 30, if you're in your late 30s and you're trying to last minute this thing, you're trying to hit a half court shot at the end of the buzzer to win the game. Yeah, it can happen, but it does not happen. You can't live on that. So it's dangerous because women are going to find themselves in a bad position. For men to get married under 30, oh man, bro, listen, I'll be honest. I go back and forth with this because my son is under 30 and I would love for him to not waste his time out here being a bachelor. And he has a girlfriend and they have a kid together and they're not married. And I keep I'm my brain is like, dude, but I'm also like, you can't, as a man, you can't just want to be married. You have to be ready to be a husband.
I think again, I'm not married, I don't have kids, right? So I'm gonna relay to you on expertise on that particular point. From my perspective, as someone who is definitely been brought up in an environment where marriage is promoted and extremely important, and subsequently someone who is broken out from other family members to create amount of success that nobody else has. I think I have a simple rule on that. If by the age of 30 a man is on his trajectory to be within the top 20% of men within the next 5 years, so by the time he's 35, he should not get married. If he is not, he should absolutely get married.
So you're saying if he is on that trajectory, he should not get married?
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because
Yeah.
if he is on that trajectory, then at that point, at 30, he has not reached his peak market value. So he is not in the best possible place to negotiate with terrorists, right? So he needs to wait until he gets to that point, and then he can actually negotiate from a position of strength. A man who is realistically not on that trajectory, and I don't care what your intentions and your goals are, I'm talking about, are you on the trajectory to hit that? That man should absolutely get married, because you're never going to be able to negotiate with a terrorist, and you're going to be, well, you're not negotiating because you're just accepting the terms of the terrorist. So find a woman that will give you a good 50-50 deal and not annoy you, and get married.
So I would say this about the guys who are on that trajectory. The problem with so many guys is they
Say we.
They're
You're one of
no,
us.
no, not we.
Unless
No,
you
y'all.
unless you identify as something else today.
I listen. No, because I don't identify as a man that would not be able to negotiate, because I know I don't have to negotiate with terrorists, because I know how to vet those that are not the terrorists. See, we one issue that we have, it's astounding. Men are not taught as young men, and I mean boys. This needs to be learned from adolescence. When you are in middle school, what we call middle school in the United States is grades 6
through
7th, and 8th, kind of.
Now it's 5th grade. So depending,
Yeah,
like fifth,
the moment you're hitting puberty, you become interested in girls. At the very moment you start getting a little erection and you get interested in girls, somebody should be showing you how to vet for quality potential from day one. Not when you're 25, not when you're 30, not when you have all your money. You should be taught how to understand how to deal with women from such an early age, that at any given point you can vet and navigate, and you can find the right woman at the right time.
Fine, I agree.
So I agree with you. If you don't have, and I'm not shaming men that have not been taught that, because some just haven't. So I'm not shaming men that have not been taught that. But there's a different group of men. There are men that know that and men that don't. So if you don't, I agree. If you just don't have it in you to even vet for all that, you just want her to come ready, or you want to be, like you said, you want to be in the best position to get what you want without having to negotiate for terrorists, because you might be in you're trying to navigate a landmine at that point. And I don't believe in men trying to navigate landmines. I do believe as a man, you don't navigate landmines. You take the easiest road travel. But you got
the average man will be negotiating and navigating landmines. I don't care what anyone says, because unfortunately, the financial incentives of the financial system that we're at, that's where my main work is, right? So understanding the financial incentives around how people behave leads me to understand that unless you have the ability to be in that top 20% bracket, and I'm giving that with a lot of liberal love, because again, even 120K isn't enough for a woman who's earning $50,000 a year because of the debt situation that we spoke about. So, a man who seems to be, earning lower than $120,000 a year, you are going to negotiate with that woman because you need her income. If you need her income, right, you are going to negotiate. Simple as that. Unless you can afford to employ your woman, and I'm not saying actually pay her. What I'm saying is actually afford to employ her for whatever she would be earning. You're not in a position to see the landmines and navigate them because of the systems that we live in. It's a corrupt system, and it's got us to here. But you need two incomes. If you need two incomes, then I don't know any woman that's going to accept, oh, I want you to cook, clean, have sex with me as much as I want, go to the gym, have as many children as I want, take care of my parents, take care of your parents, go help me build my reputation and status. And by the way, when you earn your money, I want you to come and give it to me because I'm the man to control this relationship. And by the way, I want you to go and actually work the same hours that I'm working. I think she's going to tell that man to.
No, and it would be ridiculous. It would be ridiculous for a man to desire that.
Well, that involves a man who cannot afford to employ his woman. He needs to negotiate with a woman, right?
Okay,
and in that scenario, he is negotiating.
I have to step in real quick because I have to let everyone know on Clubhouse that I'm shutting down the room. Click the link up top to come over and join. And then if you wish to join the panel, you can click the link in the comment sections on YouTube to hop on the panel and join the discussion. So until next time, Clubhouse, see you all later.
I would say, again, I agree. Listen, there's look.
Again, it's hard. It's really hard.
In the economic world that we if you're in the first world, United States, United Kingdom, if you're in a first world nation, these are the terms, right? I get it. What I urge men to do if they can, if you can find places, and I know the United States well enough to know that these places exist. Come out of the higher cost living areas. Find your woman in the lower cost living areas. What do you want? What's on your list? Because then I need to know what's on the man's list. I mean, listen, nobody can get everything on their list. Do you want this woman that looks a certain way? Whatever your aesthetic is that you prefer, right? You have a physical aesthetic. Most men are getting tripped up because they have a physical preference along with these other things. You as a man, in order to get the peace and the participation and the what's the word I'm looking for? The agreeable, you might have to scale down your preferences as far as the physical goes. You might have to. I mean, that's like, it's just that simple.
Are you saying that
you're gonna go for an ugly woman?
Are you saying that beautiful women aren't agreeable?
No.
That's not what he's
saying. I'm saying that the beautiful women are agreeable. I have one, so you know I don't believe that. But I know how to I know how to vet for all these little things. So if you don't want to jump through all that, get to a lower cost area, and also
find an ugly one.
find one that's a little less than attractive than what because I mean, LeTisha, you can speak to this. Men, I don't want to listen. Men have some unbelievable standards as far as what the woman must look like.
I don't think
Yes.
they do. I don't think a man has an unbelievable standard because he doesn't want a woman to have fake hair, fake lips, fake eyes, fake ears, fake, everything.
You have to qualify for what you want. I don't care what it is.
That's true.
So I agree that men don't want fake hair, fake nails, but I don't think that's what Manuel is talking about. I do think because Manuel, your wife is natural, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, she colors her hair. She does color.
Yeah,
her hair.
but for the most part, she's
Yeah.
not out here trying to be like having the BBL and all that makeup and stuff.
How how
No.
how young was your wife when you married her?
All right, so we have because we are now. I'm 41, and we've been married for 2 years
Oh
now.
my gosh, you've
she's
gotten old.
I have you. I'm telling you, I've aged
I
before
think when
y'all's
we met,
eyes.
you were what, 36, I think?
36, 36.
Yeah.
Me and her met years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
But when you got married?
we got married. Damn, what is she now? Because age is starting to. She's 35 now or 36. So we married 2 years ago. So she was 33.
34?
However,
34, yeah.
however, I would say this: I met her in her 20s, and I was already assessing. And the only reason we didn't marry then was some career moves jumped in the way. Like there was a few things in my career that snatched me geographically that I had no control over, and I did not expect her to still be on the market. I just knew. I'm like, this woman is in the wind, and I circled the block. And she was working. I'm like, hey, okay, we got to make it happen this time. We got to make it happen because she wasn't still going to be there. But again, she only had one kid. I had my children from marriage. Like the circumstances were ideal once we got back together.
So I
And I
have to
wasn't.
admit, just speaking as a man who has never been married and doesn't have children, right? I'm not looking, and I'm 34 years old. I'm not looking for a 33, 34-year-old woman, ideally, and I'm also not looking for a woman who comes with a child from another relationship,
Oh, you
right?
shouldn't
So
be.
the market becomes a lot wider when you're looking for when you're dealing with a woman who is older, has children, been through the gambit, and also has now come to realize that she needs a little bit of reforming. The
So
market becomes
so
easier.
I would say with mine. Again, like I said, she was in her 20s. She didn't feel like there was no desperation whatsoever. It was just, I knew for me, put it like this: when I was dating then, the women that I was dating also that I was considering that did not have children, they were not an option for me because women that did not have children wanted children, and I already had three. Now, I'll just put it out there. I'm 41. I have a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, and an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I
There
think
was
this
no,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
there was
I
nothing
agree.
that. So even when her and I met, her like I'm like, look, I need you to already have a kid because I got a
I
vasectomy.
agree.
I was out the game.
I agree.
So for you,
That part
yes,
I agree
absolutely.
with. Yeah, yeah.
You're
We
in your
agree on
30s.
that.
Yeah, you're in your 30s. I wouldn't recommend you go get a woman with children. However, I would say any man, even if you want the young, the 20 something with no kids and her aesthetic. Now, the aesthetic changes the dynamics drastically because physical appearance is where everybody in this game gets so caught up and they miss these opportunities to be in long-term fulfilling relationships with people that would be the best person for them. So I, I oftentimes look at what guys got going on and what women got going on, and they'll say, "Okay, what are you looking for?" And LeTisha, she says it all the time. Well, they got to look like this, and I'm like, you want a person who looks better than 80% of people? Like, yo, that's
So, okay, but here's the thing. Women want it too, right?
yeah.
We're getting in the age of women are now putting a much higher priority on looks and sex appeal attractiveness than stability and resources. So you have two people who are looking at each other and looking at the majority of the market as being unattractive. Now, for my channel, I mostly speak on what I consider high value men, men in the top 5%. That's approximately around $350,000 a year in the United States. I think, and British, you and I were talking about this the other day, because I'm still blown that men are now having to have significant resources as well as the attraction factor.
Yeah.
When did that change? It used to be one or the other.
It changed when a woman can utilize an income and have 3 times a better lifestyle because of debt. That's when that changed.
Also, I would say, hold on, let me add one more thing. Social media, television, the idea of what a relationship looks like has totally distorted women more so than men. It has totally distorted what a long-term relationship partner looks like. They want they want the long-term relationship guy to look like the player.
And
Those
to act
guys
like him as well.
and act like him. No, that's the worst part. They want him to act. Man, listen. If I could, I'm gonna be very, very honest. I lost. So I don't feel like I lost anything, but when I was dating, I've always been able to vet for quality women. The women that were looking for a husband, when they came across me in certain phases, the way I was carrying myself, they were like, no.
That's like listen, when I came across you,
Oh yeah, you were like, huh?
I was like, no.
Listen, I joke, man. There was a woman, there was a few, but there was a woman that shot me down. Good and Cold was like, oh no, Manuel. I see your social media. I see the way you present yourself.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was like, wait, hold on, I'm just having
You were
fun.
very adamant during that time that you weren't looking to get married. You were having fun, and you were just doing you. So married women were
absolutely. And so, but I don't think marriage. I don't know. You know this more than me. I don't know if the women that I know that are the most marriage minded, they don't have as ridiculous of a standard when it comes to physical appearance. It's not as ridiculous. Most of them I know they just want the man to be not overweight, and can he be average height for a man? And they're kind of
bag over his face, but
right.
I agree in that, but that's the thing, trying to get people to see you're not as marriage minded as you think. Right?
There you go.
British and I are having conversations constantly. Like, he's like, LeTisha, these women under 30 don't want to get married. I'm like, yes they do, and I'm going to help them.
Well, matchmake him,
and having conversations with him, with the women. I had to. He was right, because all the women that were coming to my database were mostly above 30, 35. And the women who were under 30, they had what I consider insecure attachment style. They had a lot of fears, a lot of anxiety. So I started conducting all these polls and research about women over 30. They say they want it, but they really don't want it. Marriage-minded women who really are marriage-minded, they don't have these ridiculous standards, right? It's about him being a good man. Can he meet my core needs? Can he meet my needs? Stability is one of those things. Security is another. Fidelity is another. Is he going to give me children? Is he going to be committed? That's what marriage-minded women are looking for. So when I hear women talking about all this other stuff, yes, then I have to question, do you truly want marriage? What is the reason why you're creating this impossible standard that no man is going to be able to meet, or it's going to be very, very difficult for a man to meet?
LeTisha needs to set up a matchmaking site for geriatrics.
Look, I would say this.
That would be extremely profitable and easy.
I'm gonna have to run in a minute because my family just got back and they've been gone all day, so we're gonna have dinner. But I would say this. So when me and my wife got together, I just so happened to be tall. I just so happened to be 6'2", and that wasn't a standard for her. And I asked later, so what was the standard? Like, what was the physical standard? I said, be in shape, six pack. She said, no. She's like, no, a man can be a little on the heavy side, and that's fine. She's like, my standards physical are keep a good haircut, be willing to put on a suit.
Yes.
Be willing to put on a suit. Don't be overweight. She said, she said, Manuel, I'm 5'4". I don't need a man to be 6 foot nothing. She said, as long as he's 5'9", 5'10", that works for me. And she said, and I don't have to wear heels. If I'm with a man like
your current wife.
Yes, yeah.
So everyone needs to be aware that when you're talking about your current wife, she was at a completely different stage of life than what most people that are watching LeTisha.
Oh no, I would honestly say yes. The standards that what LeTisha is saying, the stability, the important things were the most important things, and the physical things were these things that were adaptable. They weren't these. It wasn't six. It wasn't 6
foot.
But
that's how I will say.
That's easy to find in a woman who's over 30 and has children.
But this was when she was 28.
So I will say that was my standard when I was, even as a teenager. Just, are you well groomed? Like, are you like, even
right.
as a teenager, I love a nice haircut, and I love someone who is put together nicely. And I'm not talking about having to be swagged out. I'm just saying, like, you look presentable, right? And that standard has been the standard since dating. And there are women out there who don't really put too much stock into you having to be fine and sexy and all the other stuff. But I will agree with British that women like myself and women with the mindset of your wife are rare.
Yeah, no, I listen, I won't even play around. I used to think that they weren't rare because when you only interact with a certain type, because you've been groomed to vet for a certain type, you think that that's the norm. Mm-hmm. I had to step back and realize later that, okay, that's not the norm. That's just, but even when I was young, like you said, even my ex, even in my dating life, the women that were in their 20s and without children in their 30s, they had a certain mindset to where those things didn't, but they came, like British said, they came from backgrounds that were marriage-minded upbringing. They came from some sort of conservative background, at least religiously. They came from older people, so they saw things and they appreciated things. The aesthetic, if you just so happen to be a really good looking man, that was great. As long as you weren't sloppy and as long as you cared and were well groomed, that's all that was necessary. I'm going to tap out, and I might get back with you guys, but I gotta go ahead and enjoy a little bit of dinner with the family.
Thank you for
nice meeting you, British. Hey, I'll get back on here. Nice meeting you, British man. Don't worry. We finna get you hooked up. We finna get you off.
I'm no what. Yeah, listen. Yes, I appreciate it. I look forward to what you bring, because LeTisha has only brought failures so far.
Don't listen to him, you guys. Don't listen to him. That's
all right. I might tap back in a little later.
All right. Well, take care. All right. Welcome, Kaya. Are you there? All right. So for those who would like to join the panel, the link is in the comments. It's pinned at the top, so you can join the link. Welcome to the stage, Chaos. When all I'm asking is that everyone refrain from cussing. That's the only rule I have, really, is that let's keep it classy. So no cussing. So welcome everyone who is watching, and then welcome. I have British hold on for dear life. I have Chaos Rain from the Chaos Rain Show, and then I have my dear good sis Kaya, who's joined us on the panel. So again, if you want to join the panel, click the link up top. And we're discussing why marriage under 30 is more important than over 30.
Now, right? Can I ask you a question on the context of this question? This applies for only women or for both men and women under 30 and getting married?
mostly for women.
Oh, that's tricky. Well, my answer, and thank you for having me up, LeTisha Underwood. As you know, I had you on my show many times, so but that's no story. It's always the intentions. If you're, let's say, and you dealt with women in the past, LeTisha, and they said they want to be a career woman, and after they get their ish together, they want to go sell down at approaching 30 or later, over 30. And I'm saying, you could do that, but are you going to look to go find men that's 15 or 20 years difference? Because you've been paying attention to detail and what the man wants, what they think, and you deal with enough clients that's above average or wherever economic situations. Most men on the average not say, I'm gonna do what I need to do to be as productive, and then come around and find a woman that's in their 30s or late 30s that might have one kid or no kids at all. It's not really a good deal for modern men today.
And so, and that's why I posed the conversation, because I'm hearing a lot of men who are, especially millennial men, who are mid 30s and up, who are not desiring women over 30 for wives. And so I wonder if women who are under 30 realize the importance of being wife ready at that age, because the boomer generation, the Gen X generation, had no problem delaying marriage till their early 30s. Like, marriage went from the average of 26 to 32.
Right.
And that was with Gen X. Now you have millennials delaying it even further, but they're not delaying it for the same reasons as
the boomers.
X.
I mean, I'm sorry, the Gen
they're not Gen X, they're not delaying it for the same reasons as Gen X. Gen X was like, listen, we're going to get ourselves together. You're going to school, I'm going to school. You got a job, we can hold off on marriage until we get to a certain place in our lives. I think now you have younger millennial men are like, I can't find what I'm looking for. Women in their 30s are not like women of my generation or the years before, whereas you're over 30, you're likely to be overweight. You're over 30, you're likely to have kids. And these men are rejecting that, whereas in my generation, the men didn't have a problem with getting with a single mother or a woman who was overweight, and being in a relationship with her, and marrying her. But you have men like British who are saying, listen, I'm on the market to get married, but I'm not trying to be married to a woman who is overweight and obese, and I'm not trying to be married to a woman who has kids. So when you have so many women on the market like that, because by the time you get in your 30s, that baby fever kicks in, and it starts to kick in around late 20s. Baby fever is a real thing. Why would you stray around on the dating market and then allow yourself to possibly get cut out there in your late 20s, early 30s? Baby fever kicks in, and then you become a baby mama at best, right? And then you've basically darn near ruined your chances of getting married. So I think I want young women to understand that although you have all of these conversations about, oh, you need to hold off and, you're too young, I want you to know that, no, you're not. You're not too young, because if you try to hold off and you try to play that waiting game and you're more focused on being single, you're more focused on finding you, that you are not likely, it's going to be harder. It's just going to be harder the older you get. So, you're going to have to fight the program. You're going to have to fight the conditioning. You're going to have to fight with everything everybody is saying about not getting married in your 20s, and focusing on being young and doing you, because the more you focus on doing you, the less you are now able to be in a relationship with someone else, because your mindset is not that of trying to partner with somebody, trying to be in a relationship with someone. Your mindset is that of a single person, independence, and getting what they want out of life. You can't have that mindset going into a relationship. You definitely can't have that mindset going into marriage. So younger women are more adaptable, more amenable to being in a relationship, whereas once you're a certain age, it becomes a lot more difficult. So Kaya, you are under 30. What are you saying? What do you think about what we're saying?
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I've been moving, so I didn't hear a lot of it. But what are we talking about today? Hey, everybody.
We're talking about why marriage under 30 is more important than over 30.
Um, Under 30. I mean, I feel like if you're waiting to over 30, 9 times out of 10 you don't want to get married, or you just been doing other things. I feel like it's more important under 30 because you have more. Well, you have more time to do stuff. Like you have more time to have babies. You have more time to figure out your life with your man, and I don't really know. I got a lot going on right now, LeTisha. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you're saying you made a great point, and I wanted British or Chaos. What are your thoughts? She said that when you're waiting till over 30, you're in your 30s. You're not really trying to get married.
Yeah, you
Are you saying men are not looking to get married when they're in their 30s? That's what she's claiming.
No, women. She's talking about women.
Well, like I said again, and then there's a lot of unmet trauma. Some women are going through that. They're not doing the shadow work because you always got to ask yourself, okay, so what timetable you, as a woman of certain age, see yourself trying to take it serious and want to be a wife, get married? That should be the more better question. Now,
Wait, is it me or
if
is
they
he
give
cutting out?
It's
an
cutting out.
actual number for the mic,
Okay, Chaos. Can you hear me? Because your mic is cutting out.
what's wrong over here?
Yeah, he's cutting out. He's cutting out. Okay, so British. I'm gonna have to mute you, Chaos, for now because you're cutting out.
I'm
Can you? Because you're cutting out. So British, because you've been saying this over 30, they just don't want it.
Under 30.
Under 30. Okay, so she says, oh, so Kaya says over 30, they don't want it. You're saying under 30, they don't want it.
Over 30, they need it.
Mm. They need the babies.
The marriage is just a convenience.
Okay.
It's a means. It's a means to an end. A woman who truly wants to be married is married in her younger years. At least that's what I've learned. Oh, look, it's my friend Bo.
Hi, Bo. Welcome, Bo.
Hey, LeTisha. Hey, British. This is a new app I've never been on.
Well, welcome to StreamYard. It helps you to stream live to YouTube. So this is actually being played across YouTube. And we are discussing why marriage under 30 is more important than over 30. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know what? Let me get my thoughts together since I just got on, and I will definitely touch in on the topic.
And get your camera together as well.
I'm studying right now. I look like a mess, but okay.
Yeah. What? What?
Nothing. Nothing else.
She's
If you don't,
studying. She needs to be studying how to make tiramisu.
if you don't want to come on camera, just post up a picture.
No, don't do that.
Oh, you want her to come on camera, Cameron?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
That's a good idea, LeTisha. Let me figure this out. Since this is the first time I'm using this, I'm going to post a picture for now, though.
Sorry, British. My bad. He's gonna get me afterwards. Um, I agree. I agree that marriage under 30 is so much easier to achieve and obtain. But I think that what women want is what causes them to not um, obtain it. And when I say what they want, it's the standards. They want the men to be very good looking, and he has to come with some type of resources. So you have a 22-year-old young lady who is saying he needs to be operating like that of a 45-year-old, 48-year-old father.
Yeah, but the reason for that is the financial incentives that we spoke about. It's because a woman who is 30, or let's say 27, is making on average, if she's in a C-suite position, she's making more money than her male counterpart. Add on to the fact that she can use debt to increase her lifestyle, and um, she's now using that debt to give her the income of, let's say she's making $40,000 a year in a C-suite position or in at that age range. She's now using credit cards to give herself the lifestyle of $120,000 person. So now she can't look at a man until he's making more than 120. At 27, how many men are making more than 120? There you go.
So Darby says British is 100% right. Women under 30 do not actually want to be married. Those that do already are by 24, 25. So what do you say to the all of the conversations, all the rhetoric out here that's pushed on women to hold off on marriage until well after that age? You think that's a factor? That's more of a factor than them not really wanting it?
I don't think that's a factor. I think that's a downstream effect of the financial incentives.
Okay, but most women aren't in that position. Those positions. The average income in America for a woman is what, 40 something thousand, if that, maybe 38,000.
Yeah, but if you look at so I'm gonna try and. Was that someone speaking?
Oh, no, I was just saying it's I think it's 38 to 40, something like that.
Okay, so 38,000. Then 38,000. So the average income for a woman is $38,000.
Yeah, but it's very important to look at college educated women. That's what I'm trying to find. So,
Okay, so you're trying to find a college. Your ideal mate is college educated.
yeah, I mean, it's important to look at college educated,
Okay.
right? Because I think most men would prefer a college educated woman, even though
Does it
I
matter?
didn't. What?
Sorry. I was asking, does it matter the degree?
It's a degree what?
I was asking, did the degree matter? Sorry.
Okay, I see what she's saying. So all this rhetoric about men saying your degree doesn't matter, you're saying
It's only broke men that are saying that. Because when you have
That's
when you
exactly
have
what it is.
when you have resources and you have something going on in life, it is much better to have a beau by your side who has experience in the financial space and has a financial manager's license and has been educated, etc., than a woman who's never been and never done anything and just worked at Target her entire life until she married you. And if men can't see that it's better to have a woman, by the way, they both have to behave. I'm not saying like, oh, because she's low, she gets to not behave. I'm saying it's better to have a woman who behaves and is a beau compared to a woman who behaves and is a Target employee until she was 27.
but what's the amount of women like so that dating pool is not even large. Like I get it, but I'm saying that dating pool is not even large. But then you also, I get what you're saying. And it's not just broke men, because I'm hearing college educated men saying your degree doesn't matter. Although I understand what they're saying. They do prefer someone at their level, but they
Yeah.
don't want someone to come and say, my degree is why you should choose me.
Absolutely.
My degree is what brings the most value to this to you.
Yeah.
And they're
Or
saying, no,
because
that's
I have a degree, you need to accept XYZ. That's what we don't
right.
want to hear.
So that's what they don't want to hear. But yes, successful men do prefer college educated women, intelligent women. There are going to be some exceptions, but college.
I'd put up with a woman who doesn't have a college degree if she has a business of her own in a good industry that she's run for a while, for example. So it's not really about the college education. It's more about what the college education brings you.
What does it bring you?
The ability to navigate different situations, the ability to have intelligent thought process, the ability to have conversations without confrontation, the ability to sit in an environment and try and actually go for what you want. So, like, there's a lot of benefits that actually accomplishing something before you get married brings you, which is why men should be supremely much more accomplished than the woman that they want to marry. But it's important for her to at least demonstrate the ability to be accomplished.
All right, Darby has another point. Single women who claim to want to be married don't even know why they want to be a wife. British has demonstrated that on a couple of clubhouse rooms where he asked the women. That is true. Um,
I keep
one,
proving it to LeTisha, but she just needs more proof.
I don't need any proof. I kind of no. For me, it's not needing proof. I'm just still stuck on having hope that these women will get it together. That's what I'm. That's what I look to. Is that I want them to get it together. I've been talking to them on Clubhouse at least for almost 3 years now, and it's like, okay, if you want marriage, now is the time to start thinking about it. Waiting
But they
until
don't. They don't, LeTisha. They don't want the marriage because they do not want to put up with a man's BS. Every person has BS, right? I got to put up with her BS. She's got to put up with my BS. She doesn't want to put up with my BS unless the rewards of putting up with my BS are significantly higher than what she can produce herself. And in order for a man to compete, unless he is much older than her and much, much, much more wealthier than her, he does not have the ability to compete. A woman making $40,000 a year, living $120,000 a year lifestyle, it doesn't compute. It doesn't work because that guy, even if he's making 120K a year, he's not spending. She's spending based on the debt that she's borrowing. There's no tax to pay on debt.
okay, I get it, right? But women aren't thinking of it like that. They're not even
Women
going to
aren't thinking
admit
of it.
themselves. They're just looking at it as for the women, and I'm not talking about the women who've already decided that they don't want to get married. I'm talking about the women who are actually, because like Kaya wants to get married, right? There are young women who actually want to get married, but they were either not educated on it, they were not raised in it, they were not talked about, but it's they're looking at it as there's a lot that's going on that's being pushed at them. Do you know how much pushback I get when I tell people you need to be actually searching for your mate in high school? That is, to me, is the ideal. Like, if you want marriage, you want marriage, you should be searching for your mate in high school, get you a long-term boyfriend or girlfriend, and you work that thing out.
Well, then your high value man argument goes out the window then.
Why is that?
Because no man is a high value man when he's in high school.
But no, okay, I see what you're saying, but
So who do you want these women to marry? You want them to marry a potential Dusty?
it's not about who I want them to marry. I have conversations with women about who they want to marry. So
Well,
even
they
though,
want to marry a guy that can provide them the lifestyle that they have earned.
right, but that's not that's not really the majority, overwhelmingly majority. I would say that's about okay.
Even
So
if a woman knows that she's going to work, she still wants a man who can provide her the option to not work.
May I add something? Because I actually get what LeTisha is saying. Actually,
Finally.
like if we were trained in high school to look for our mate, I think that would be great, but I'm trying to think of most women dating in high school. The immature clowns that we had back then, they're not husbands we'd want right now. Like, you guys ever notice, like, the people in high school, like, they're just, I can't believe I dated that person. You get
Yep.
what I'm saying?
but
So,
so I get what you're saying, but all the guys that I was like interested in, that I was vetting for relationships in high school, they weren't clowns. Because I guess for me, I've only dealt with the serious guys. Like, you had to be, in order for you to take me out, sit with me at lunch, you had to be a serious guy. You couldn't be the clown. You couldn't be the one who was, not serious. And I always liked the guys who did well in school. Like, you had to be on honor roll.
Vetting, I think what you guys are talking about is you got to vet, right? And vetting works at every stage of life. Like, so it's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna just regret the people that I dated in high school. That's one thing, but you got to actually be able to vet. And vetting, you need that skill whether you're dealing with someone at high school level or whether you're dealing with someone at professional level. The vetting itself is the skill that a lot of people need to learn. But unfortunately, as I've been pointing out to Letitia this entire weekend, is that the skill of the vetting is downstream effects of the financial systems that we live in today, and that is a problem.
So Nicole says, "What about the smart, unpopular guys? Many of them turn out well, not the athletes."
What the hell does what the hell does many of them and turn out well mean?
So what she is saying is that, because what Bo said was, well, yeah, in high school I do agree with what Letitia is saying, but a lot of the guys that we were, dealing with were clowns. They weren't husband material. But what I am saying and what she is saying is that there were actually males and young men in high school who were actually showing themselves that they were going to be potential good husbands. They did well in school. They had a plan for their lives after high school, and they went on to be in good careers and to become successful later in life. Those young men do exist, and they do exist within high school. So I'm saying that, because the way that my mother talked to me about relationships, she didn't talk about get the finest guy. She didn't talk about fun. She's like, you always want to get a man who is going to take care of his family and do well in life, right?
Yeah, but
And one thing she stressed was, my mom always had a category for men: the bimbos and the good guys. She called all the the guys who were just trying to have fun, they weren't taking high school serious, bimbos. And once, if any guy talked to her about, and she's seen them and she's like, that's a bimbo, okay, that guy is not for me. So then by the time I got to 11th, 10th, 11th grade, I knew exactly what type of guy she was referring to as the guy that was going to be the one who's going to turn out to be husband material. In fact, I ended up marrying him, right? My ex-husband and I had no problem taking that leap between the ages of 19 and 20. There are, and we went from working at Arby's to, once he joined the army, we were basically doing well for most people our age. We're 20 years old living in the middle class. So that's what she's saying. That's what I'm saying, that if you're serious about dating in high school, especially as a young woman, I'm not really speaking to men, but there are some men out there that are going to be serious. Get serious about your dating life in high school. Don't wait until after college, because too many times the conversation is, oh, wait until after college. You don't have to do it right now. You don't have to focus on it right now. You're too young. What do you need to focus on relationship for? Well, as you see, British women are waiting until they're done with their careers, they're settled in their careers. And on average, at what age are women getting settled in their careers? By the time they're 28 is when they're getting settled. Well, they're 28, they're on the market, and then next thing you know, they're 32, they're 34. and they're saying that they want marriage, and it's becoming harder because the men who are 34 and 36 are saying we don't want a woman who is 32, 34.
Great. So, okay, I completely agree, right? Every woman should find uh, a man when she's in high school. Okay, I completely agree with you. How the hell does that help the audience that's watching and looking for answers?
No, I was just
Now that they're
giving.
past the expiration date of high school, what do you do? What
I
does
was
Bo do?
I was pointing out that my actual premise is that people need to look all the way back to high school. But yes, everybody
Well,
is
when
high
they come back in their next life, when they reincarnate and come back in their next life as a high value woman, right? In their teens, they can figure that out. But right now, the problem that you've got is that you got 28-year-old women who are making 60, $70,000 a year, living a $250,000 a year lifestyle because of debt, and want a guy that at least makes 500 a year at their age range.
Okay.
Checkmate, game over, you're done. Lower your lifestyle. Get used to that.
I do say that all the time is that the one thing about successful, especially professional women, is they price themselves out of the market because there's not a lot of men at the top. And those men are going to be very, 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 very picky. They're going to have a high standards, lots of criteria that you're going to have to meet. But you're pricing yourself out of the market. This is why, if you focus on being in a relationship in your formative years, high school going into college, you're not going to be so focused on, yeah, you get your degree, but then you graduate from college, you're having kids. And sure, even if you work in your career field, you're not focused on creating this independent life. You're now focused on creating a life for you and your mate, you and the family that you want to have.
You know what I've just figured out while I'm listening to you talk? I've
What?
just figured out that, by the way, who's Oni?
Oni's not one of your friends? Hi, Oni.
What's up, Phil? I think that might be inmate.
I don't think that's inmate. Is that you, Uno? That might be Uno. Might be Uno.
What's up, Phil? Looking sharp today.
Hey, British.
Hey,
Hey,
Phil.
LeTisha. What's going on, everybody?
So,
All right.
LeTisha, what I was saying was that the thing I've just figured out while you're talking is that the reason why you get a lot of 35, 37 plus year old women coming to you is that the reality starts to set in when they're 30, and it takes them 5 to 7 years to actually give up because they're quote unquote in the fight. They believe it's going to happen. They believe that if they make 100,000 a year, that they're going to make, if they make 100,000 a year and these high level, high earning women, they're living a lifestyle of 250 a year. They still believe for 5 to 7 years while they ride the carousel that they're going to meet a guy who makes $600,000 a year at her age, and he's going to wife her up. And it takes a full 7 years of getting beaten up by the world for a woman to actually give up and then go, damn, I need to get married. And that's when they come to you. That's the problem. I just figured it out. There you go.
You're just now figuring that out. I've been in that.
Is
Listen,
that is that the only problem?
takes them 7 years. Phil, everything is downstream of financial incentive.
Nothing happens like it does in the earlier days where you meet somebody, you like them, and then you become boyfriend, girlfriend, and you get married. No, it's like everybody thinks that it takes at least 5 to 10 years of dating. Not even just being in a relationship, of dating or being in a situationship and then going off to a relationship to where you get married. And now you're 25, 28, and now you're jumping on the marriage, you're trying to jump on the marriage market at 25, 28, and you're looking at a 10-year span, because now how things are, you're looking at like a 10-year span of you finding someone.
No, it's a 10-year span of giving up. And
Well,
then
just
you can actually find someone.
There's
That's
one
what
other issue on top of what you're saying, though, British, which is that women confuse their SMV with their marriage value. Your sexual value, again, don't. A lot of women confuse the fact that because dudes, I mean, again, dudes are going to be sexually attracted to women well into their 30s, and the reason why they're looking for that man, British, for marriage, is because they can get that guy in bed, right? I think women don't understand that as men we have kind of two different values. And yeah, we'll have sex with you all day. That doesn't necessarily make you commitment worthy for us. And they don't realize that when we reject women, we do kind of quietly. We'll reject women from marriage, but not necessarily from the possibility of continuing having sex. Exactly. So they think as long as you're interested sexually, you're potentially interested marriage-wise, and that couldn't be further from the truth in most cases.
That is true. So Phil, let me ask you: do you have a boy or girl? I can't remember.
I have one of each.
Okay, so would you encourage your daughter to get married in her 20s?
Yes.
Okay.
I've said this on Clubhouse. My daughter was head over heels in love with the Will Smith version of Aladdin. She knows it verbatim. And so she and I made a contract. As many times as she wanted to watch it, we made a contract. Daddy's going to help her choose her prince, right? And so I've said on Clubhouse that I think my advice as a girl dad, my advice to my daughter would be to look to be married by 25. Really, if you for some reason somehow need to stretch it out, 27, drop dead. Yeah.
And what age range of guys should she be looking for?
Oh, and she should be looking for a man at least 5 to 7 years her senior.
The blueprints are there. LeTisha, the blueprints are there.
No, so again, we're dealing with someone who has a daughter who is actually engaged at 22. Her fiance is 23. They met in college. But the reason why she was able to get to that point is in her early 20s is because I raised her and told her about dating seriously in her high school years, right? Dating in her high school years. Don't just look at it as something to do, something to have fun. Take it seriously and only deal with boys who also take it seriously, right? Because there are boys in high school that will take it serious. Now, did she get the hottest guys? No, right? But when it came time to go to the dances, she had a date. She had, the boy is doing what he's supposed to do. She's not sitting there crying over a boy who was acting up and doing all this stupid stuff, going from girl to girl. No, I mean, she's only really had one serious relationship in high school, but even still, when she had guys who were, trying to take her out, she would only deal with the serious ones. And when she got to college, same thing happened. And lots of guys were trying to, take her out, push up on her, but they weren't serious. And she knew how to figure out the serious ones from the non-serious ones because that's what I taught her. Those were the conversations we were having. So a lot of young women are not having these conversations. So when I'm saying that it's ideal for you to find your mate in high school, I'm simply pushing back on the rhetoric out here that people think that you should start looking in college or after college. No, I'm like, start in high school if you can. So if you have cousins, sisters, daughters, older women are going to be watching, you need to have them get serious about high school. Now, for the women who are in their 20s and their 30s, who are now looking for marriage, you have to ask yourself, why do you want to get married now? What is your reason? What is your reasoning for getting married now? Because that's the only way that you're really going to figure out how to properly what guy is right for you, right? Once you know the reason why you want to get married, is it because you're tired? Is it because you just want to have children? If it's that, men will be able to sniff that out, and they're just going to put you on the sex category. That's the category, or we're just gonna kick it, hang out, right? But if you really want to get married, you should figure out why. What's your why, and why now? Why not before? Because yes, ideally in your 20s, women who want to get married don't wait until later in life. So what caused you to change your mind now? What happened to where now you've decided you are ready? And so I don't think enough women are asking themselves that. But welcome, Oni. I'll call you Oni.
I don't know why all my neighbors have their dogs outside today, but that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. Oh
Who
snap!
let the dogs
I
out?
finally didn't miss it. As soon as I got the notification, I was like, "Oh snap! Let me tune in," because I actually have a few friends who've been on panel before. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing you guys. I don't think when I see women my age, they don't, because I'm not going to say that yet, but they don't think about it. They don't think deeply. They don't reverse engineer what they want, because they don't think that anything bad can happen to them. So like most people who are young, especially me, we don't do things until we need to do it. As a man, I think that's the double standard that we have. We can fail over and over and over again. At 60, I can start a business like the guy with KFC and be a millionaire by 70. That's possible, but they're not thinking about it at all. They're not thinking about it. They think it's a given, and they don't think that they're going to lose. There isn't a, because of the way they've been socialized, there isn't a thought of, wait a minute, what if I don't get that? What would my life look like if I'm not in a long-term relationship after the age of 35? Even the good girls, the bad girls, they don't think about it. They don't. So because they feel like they don't have to. It isn't even something that they contend with, because they're so, why would they think of failure? They haven't had to. They've gotten everything for nothing so far. So that's what I think.
Okay, and you are under 30, right, Oni?
Yeah, I just turned 25 in April.
Right. And so you're saying that the women who are in your age demographic, they're just not thinking about it at all. So then I have a question for you guys. Are you willing to wait for the women to just get it together in their third, and then when they're in their 30s and pick them up? Or are you guys just like, you know what, I'll just stay single, I won't marry?
Getting legally married after like the age of 30, I don't see that. I don't see that for myself. But it's kind of crazy because I'm talking to someone right now and she's cooperative. So I would do it as early as possible, just because I feel like even when I get older, my standard's gonna be really high, and it's gonna take so much energy. Like I don't want all that energy, even though I'm gonna have my fun. It's still like a lot of energy just cashing and releasing multiple women. So I just rather have one and just focus on my career. I just rather do that. But that's all up to what options I have. And right now, I think I'm pretty lucky with who I'm talking to. Hopefully it goes well.
I just want to say I completely agree with him. I think I would have been significantly more successful than I am if I had picked up a good woman when I was, I don't know, 28, 29, and focused on that. And so for me, I think it's extremely important for every man to find a good woman and focus on his career and stop being out here trying to give all this sexual attention and energy to women that don't deserve it. And
It's
most
exhausting.
importantly, they can't even feel it because they're too numb because of the experiences that they've had.
Mm. Well, so British, that's the other thing, and it's well, I guess this is not really a question. First off, congratulations to your daughter, LeTisha. I'm glad she was able to lock down a guy who's seriously minded. It's interesting, British, because like you said, the synergies for a good woman are always are good at any stage. But I think, and this is one of the reasons why when I think about my daughter, I think she should be looking for a guy 5 to 7 years her senior, because I think a lot of women make the mistake. It's not even that they'll necessarily invest in a guy who's not serious. He may be serious, but it's not always clear if the guy at her peak value, at her peak market value, what his capacity is going to be in terms of supporting a family and all the things and the lifestyle that she may want. So I think you got to give men some time to not only find their purpose, but also hit their financial stride. And that's the thing. And it's not to say, that can't happen at 23 or, at 28, as British just said. I think women need to, if they are going to make that investment, it's like with credit, right? You want to see what is the history of this person. And you can tell if a woman is, like I'm saying, 25 to 27, and she's looking at a guy 5 to 7 years, her senior, right? 30 to 34. You can kind of tell what the trajectory is. He may not have totally hit it, but you can tell kind of what path he's on. You can tell what he's been serious about. And I think that's more, I do think I've always thought it was weird for women to try to tie down with a guy who is basically their age, especially if they're really young, because you generally, for men, you're not going to see in your early 20s kind of what he's made of and where he's going. You don't always have that history. You're not going to have a clear sense of what his trajectory truly is for what you may actually want.
So I think we need to have some more ladies on this panel, especially if you're under 30, to have this conversation. It's so unbalanced. And it's all the men are coming up. So ladies, if you're watching, click the pin link up top and come on and join us and tell the men what your thoughts are on marriage. Because I know that there are women who are under 30 who do want marriage, right? So let your voice be heard. Tell these men you want marriage and you are looking, not looking, but you're on the market for your husband, right? Bo, are you under 30 or 30 and under?
Sorry, Mike. It froze. No, I'm not under 30. Mm-mm.
Okay. All righty, fellas.
Sorry, point.
No, it's just I really want to hear from the women who are under 30, because the one thing that British is right about is that when you do have these conversations, it is a bunch of women who are older.
I just want to point out for Bo's benefit, because I don't normally support the stupidity on this app or in these conversations, but to Bo's benefit, she has lived a life that is a completely different trajectory to the normal woman that tries to have these conversations. And she definitely doesn't look like she's over 30.
Is that Bo from New York?
Unfortunately,
yes,
yeah.
Unfortunately. What's up, Bo? That's too funny.
Hey, what's going on, Phil?
So no,
you,
LeTisha,
British.
you're looking for younger women, and Udo said it. Like, they're not. The younger women their heads have all been capped up. They're not.
Right,
They're not looking for marriage.
Here's the thing, though. Since I've been focusing on the younger women, I've actually gotten a lot more younger women reaching out to me for advice, joining my mentorship program, joining my private Facebook group. I'm now starting to so thank you, British, because maybe they thought I was talking to the older women because I'm an older woman. But since I've been making it clear that, I am putting an emphasis on educating younger women on marriage and dating, they've been reaching out. So I get it. It's not going to be the majority, but there are some women. So do y'all need the majority of women to be young, under 30?
They don't qualify. That's the problem, though. Like, they might be under 30 and they might be telling you, oh, I want marriage, but they don't qualify. They've not been trained. They don't know how to behave. Their social medias are completely screwed up. Their attention profiles are completely screwed up. Their dopamine systems are completely screwed up. They're not qualified. So unless they want to actually explain why they're actually qualified or actually do the work that's necessary to become qualified, I don't care what they say. Everyone says that they want XYZ.
So Victoria has a question. She says, well, she made a comment. She said, I wonder if that makes a difference, women that don't look older.
That's a good point. The women that don't look older, what matters for me, at least as a man, and every man can answer for themselves, is the energy that they have. I would much prefer a woman that was closer to 30 who had the energy of a woman who was 22, because the life experience in terms of her work side that she will have had will allow her to stay, like actually have an intelligent conversation, etc., but that doesn't happen. Why? Because of the sexual decisions that they make.
What do you
What's
mean?
the
What do you mean the
energy
energy?
of a 20? Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the energy of a
What?
22-year-old?
What I mean is that youthful, like just like innocence, so to say, right? Like a youthful innocence. I didn't mean it specifically 22, but whatever that youthful innocence is, a woman that can maintain that while gaining her professional experience is infinitely more valuable than a 22-year-old who has none of that professional experience. Depends on the type of man you are. But
Even if the 30-year-old woman is beautiful, people who, because people are creatures of habit. So if you live a single life, you're going to get better at being single and optimizing towards that. And it's almost like clay hardening. And no matter if the woman is a good woman or a bad woman or city girl or not, or contemporary or modern or traditional, both men and women, as they get older, it's harder to cohabitate with someone they don't have a history with. We weren't designed to be not pair bonded for 30 years.
the pair bonding is to do with oxytocin release, right? And a woman who is 30 years old has been getting her oxytocin released since she was 18 years old, if not earlier, and none of that has turned into a relationship. So now her oxytocin receptors are like, screw this woman. I'm not listening to any of this oxytocin that's coming out. Then you add on the fact that the birth control pill affects oxytocin release. So if you've got a woman who has maintained her fidelity until she's 30, continued working, continued, doing the things professionally that she wants to do, but not been on birth control, not had, an unlimited go arounds the carousel. You have to think of creative ways to say things because you can't swear on LeTisha's.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, like she's got an unlimited release of oxytocin, and now it's like, oh, the oxytocin's thinking, okay, this woman's lost her mind, and I'm just gonna ignore this. So that's why the pair bonding goes away. It's not there are women in their late 20s and 30s that can pair bond absolutely fine if they have not been ran through and they have not been chemically castrating themselves from oxytocin.
You know what? And I just wanted to say, because a few I think it was 2 weeks ago, when you guys really start to focus more on, it was probably more than 2 weeks, but when you guys start to focus more on the younger women, obviously I was pessimistic about it. It's making a difference. Even
Thank
if
you.
it's like one or two, it's making a difference. Like, look at the comment, and they're coming genuinely. And I think, you guys, these are girls that I talk to. Some of them I've talked to. And it's making a difference. It's making a difference. And the statement that British made about them not being qualified, they're not going to be qualified. But the biggest hurdle I think it's going to be for the women is actually knowing the problem is half of the battle in this context for me. Because the ones who are coming with open hands to the table, that's literally half the battle, because that's why most of them aren't. And they're doing it at a time where things can still be salvaged. And it's better than not doing it at all. So, especially when it comes to something like the M, like marriage, I don't think anyone's ready for that. I just think it comes down to pedigree and temperament and things like that. But if a person wants to have something, they're going to figure out a way to get it when they prioritize it. So if a woman is just being an airhead and dainty and just being a conformist like everyone else, they're not qualified. They're not qualified. But a woman who is coachable and humble, to me, that's what I, yeah, that's what I like. So,
Okay, so
because we're never going to be, not everybody starts at the finish line.
I
It's
was just about
impossible.
to swing it over to you, Ted, when he said coachable, right? Because I have a question that a comment that came up, and I'm going to swing it over to you, right? So Darby says the single women under 30 have broken brain chemistry. As far as I know, there is no research known for techniques to correct this. Do you? Can you? Okay, go
I'll
ahead.
address that
Okay.
later, but I wanted, I've been listening for quite a few minutes. And when I heard you saying women should look for a guy in high school, that actually is correct. You just didn't take it the extra step. And I don't mean to offend anyone. That's never my intent, but sometimes I can be brutally blunt. But I heard the woman say, well, look at the guys you dated in high school. A lot of them turned out to be clowns. That's not a reflection on the guys. That's a reflection on the woman who dated clowns in high school. Um, and that says a lot about how you see yourself. But if you look at the kinds of men a woman dates, she's telling you how she sees herself. And so if you see a woman who's always dating clowns or thugs, you should really question yourself as to why you would take her seriously, because she's going to pick up a lot of bad habits and she won't develop the kind of relationship skills for a high caliber man. But in British brings up a good point, like who cares about high school? These women, you know, they're in their 30s, even if they're in their 20s, they're no longer in high school. The point of finding a guy in high school is it's what LeTisha was saying about her daughter. You have to know what to look for. So a high value man doesn't become high value because he's making $200,000 a year. He had that capacity always. And it just took the rest of the world to see who he was, and they used the milestone of money. Like Steve Jobs was always Steve Jobs, and Einstein was always Einstein. Um, some people just had to catch up to see what, you know, they were really made of. So if a woman knows what to look for, she can meet that guy in high school and at college at the latest. I don't know if it was your show, but I talked about I was I was with the former chairman of the New York Stock Exchange and his wife, and she was talking about how she was doing things in college. He went to West Point, and the things that she was doing, like she was, I don't know why she felt she had to communicate this to me, but she was communicating that she was doing things while he was in college to make life easier for him. So she was adding value to his life. And I'm assuming she knew that this guy was going to be valuable in life, in his future, and she would be better to catch him now, not try to catch this guy when he's, you know, in full stride in his career. So a woman has to know what to look for in high school and college. And if you miss the boat on those two stops, or you didn't go to college, you need to get someone who can help you, an older woman who can mentor you. And a couple of weeks ago, I think you'll remember this, British, a woman asked, how do I find an honorable guy? And I said, be an honorable woman. And everyone gave her some really complicated advice. But then we found out her past marriage, she was not being an honorable woman. And as a result, she married a deceitful man because she was a deceitful woman. So the women who are looking for, if you don't want to date clowns at any age, and you want to date these high quality men, you need to be that high quality woman. So first you need to look at yourself and see if you meet that criteria for dating the kind of guy who's going to have the trajectory and the lifestyle you want. And if you haven't developed yourself, and I think you were saying this a few minutes ago, British, you haven't done that work, if you haven't grown up with both parents where you can lean on both parents to help you, uh, you know what to look for, how to comport yourself, you need to find someone who can help you. And we always say women should look for an older woman, but you need to be talking to a guy too who will be honest with you. You know, if whether it's an uncle or it's someone who's older who's going to be really honest and tell you your Instagram is going to turn off any kind of quality man. The way you dress, the way you talk, you know, someone needs to help you do that. A man and a woman, if you are a heterosexual woman. And I'll stop there.
Okay, so I agree. For those of you who are watching, please go ahead and like this show, get the likes up. and share the show so that YouTube can pick up the algorithm and we can continue to have this conversation, and it also helps the channel to continue to grow. So if you can get the likes up, I see how many of you are watching, and the likes are not matching the amount of people that are watching. So if you can please get the likes up, I truly appreciate it. So Ted, there is this comment.
Yep. I'll
Single,
address it. Yep.
so he is saying, as far as he knows, there's no research shown to correct what he is saying, broken brain chemistry. Do you understand what he means by broken brain chemistry?
I understand. Yeah. So there's research to understand how it happens. So it's called a bond break cycle. Even if a woman is doing a one night stand, for the woman to have that one night stand, she's still going to secrete oxytocin and dopamine and endorphins to be able to be aroused sexually with that guy, to have a one night stand. She's going to bond with him. It's a one night stand, and she breaks it. And then if she goes and has a 6-month relationship, she bonds for 6 months and she breaks it. She has another 6-month bond break, one night stand bond break. Eventually, for women, that causes trauma to the brain. You secrete it, and then you break the bond. Women's brains were not designed to go constantly through that bond break cycle. So, one of the ways that, and then if he ejaculates in you, his semen is in you for a long time, maybe forever. But one of the things that I've seen help people, I've seen it increase IQs, which is to be able to I'm going to say it grammatically incorrect, untraumatize your trauma. It's like you untraumatize your brain, but that's going to take work. Some psychologists are good at it, not all. But if you can go through the kind of transformational work where you actually get to unlearn, because a lot of the trauma that people experience, and I don't want to get too abstract with this, but a lot of the trauma that people claim they had is mostly self-imposed. So if you can start to undo the trauma, because the more trauma you have in your brain, it starts to malfunction the brain's normal operations. So you no longer have optimal function of your brain. So untraumatizing really forces you to have to deal with whether it's molestation, rape, all of those things, the bond break cycles. You have to kind of really reverse engineer the trauma to undo it and unlearn it. And that's going to take some real work and a real commitment on a woman's part to do that. That's the only way. And I cannot give you any formal research, but I've just from the neuroscience work that I've done, that's what I've seen to be most successful. And while dealing with the bond break cycle, it also increases IQ because it opens up your bandwidth in your brain. Like the trauma serves almost like a traffic jam, and it impedes your intelligence. So there are a number of benefits then of reverse engineering the trauma and unlearning it. I'll stop there.
Okay, well, I hope that answers Darby. Well, it speaks to what Darby was saying. Because, as I was saying to you previously, Ted, I was like, I don't know if, like, I think between you and British, you guys know how frustrated I've gotten over the weeks. And I'm like, I don't know if this can change. I don't know what can be done to change the cycle, because, I mean, we're gone on what, 50 plus years? Has it been maybe longer than that? Of all of this stuff about women, and not marriage is not a thing anymore. Marriage is not, like, to hear women saying marriage is not the goal, hear men saying they don't want to get married. I'm like, how do you undo all of those conversations?
But see, here's the odd part. those women who say, "Oh, I'm good. I make great money. I don't need a, I don't need a man. I don't want to get married." And then when you ask that same woman, if you met a man who checked every single box, would you marry him? And they almost always say, "Of course."
Yeah, but don't you think that's an unfair question? Because what you're basically saying is, if your entire dream list of a man, which means he's a strong man, but he's also a simp, he's a rich man, but he also spends money like he's not a rich man, etc., etc. Like all of those things get ticked. Of course, they're going to say yes. I think that's an unfair question.
Well, it's really not about whether the question is unfair or not. I want to know if she's lying. So if she's
But
saying,
but
I
she's
don't
not
want
lying.
to be, I don't want to be married, she doesn't want to be married for the kind of man she's qualified for. So she's
I
dug
see that.
this hole and doesn't know how to get out of it. So what most people do is suppress themselves and say, "Well, I don't care. I don't want that." But really deep down inside, so what that does is put her in conflict with herself.
I think the more important question is the question that comes after that, which is, if the answer is yes, why? Why do you even want to get married, even if it is the guy who is the right guy for you? Because I just don't think these women, especially younger women, understand why they should be getting married, or even if they should, to be honest.
So there's been a response to what Ted said. He wants to know, does that trauma uncoupling process take years, at which time those women are 35 plus and not desirable to the men they want?
It's not overnight, so it's not like you're going to take this 6-week course. Um, there are, I'm going to say it the wrong way. There are somewhat what I would call like a lightning rod way of helping, working, providing people with tools. It's much more direct. Uh, it's much more direct and gets people to uncover and have tools to be able to uh, mitigate the sabotage mindset that they have. Basically, what we're talking about is stripping a person down. I mean, ultimately, you want to get them to nothing. It could take years if they're going to be resisting, and if they're resisting, then they're actually just working against themselves. I don't even know why they are there. But it could take a year. Could take a year if the person is truly committed to the work. It could be done in a year, but it's not because they have, let's say, 28 or 30 years of bad habits. Uh, it's something that they have to stay on. Transformation doesn't stop. There's something called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, in the past, they believed that by a certain age, you had a finite set of neural pathways. So those neural pathways in your brain carry all the information. It has all your triggers, all your good memories, all of that. In neuroplasticity, you literally grow completely new neural pathways. And so that's the kind of work I'm talking about. It's disrupting the pre-existing paradigm that you've been living in and working with the person to create completely new neural pathways that will have them see themselves differently and see men differently. It's very
Okay.
much stripping down.
Do you think that any person can do this, like a lay person could do this, or is this something that only a professional, someone who knows, have the actual tools and the resources to work with someone in that manner?
It's not for lay people. I mean, it's
Okay.
I've done this with clients in a professional environment. Sometimes uh, there's like a mental preparation because I know I'm about to do brain surgery on this person. And if I say something, if I'm malicious, if I'm playing games, if I'm inauthentic, I can actually damage this person. So there has to be a huge commitment. It's like you almost have to step outside of yourself and you're committed to the person. There's no judgment, none of that.
So speaking of, real quick, I just want to give a shout out because someone said, "Hi, I read Ted's book. It's a captivating read and will take a few reads to get the concepts fully, but most of them I completely understand." So His book is Here's Why You Can't Find Love. You can get it by Ted Santos on Amazon.com. I agree. It is a really good book, really captivating book. And he speaks on some of the things that he's saying on the channel. He talks about them in the book. So
thank you, Mama Zeke. Mama Zeke, or Zeke, but thank you very much for that. Thank you. Love to hear more of your thoughts on it. So thank you.
Okay, so you're saying it's not for lay people, it's for professionals, people who actually work with people. So somebody, if you're dealing with, so then you're not, so then a guy getting into a relationship with a woman, you know, and he recognizes that there's some offness about her, and he understands pair bonding and all those other things, but you're not saying he's equipped to work with such a woman.
No, most people, one of the things that will muddy it is judgment of what the person has done in their past, or sometimes the person can tell you about something or have a perspective that could trigger you, and once you get triggered and you're trying to help someone, you're just like two blind people. You'll end up throwing stuff at one another, even if it's just words.
Okay, we got one more question. Can Black America change the course without the help of the dominant society? Unfortunately, there isn't anything Black Americans have done en masse without the blessings of white America.
If Black America depends on white America, that's like the New York Jets going to the Pittsburgh Steelers and saying, "Can you help us?" If you look at things as group economics instead of racism, you can look at it. These are tribes. I saw this video on LinkedIn, and they had, I don't know what city what it was, but there was a lot of foot traffic, and they had this Black girl just stand there. There was a fence about 1 foot high around the tree, and the little girl just stood there at the fence. And there were white people, a lot of traffic, just maybe some of you have seen it, but people just walked through their just daily business. And no one said anything to the girl. She was just standing there. The little girl may have been 7, 8 years old at the most. And no one said anything to her. And so then this was an experiment. So then they waited a while, and then they put a white girl the same age, and it was amazing how many white men stopped to ask that little girl if she was okay. So if you understand like group economics, people in their group will take care of their group, and that video I just talked about is really what it's about. You know, if it's you're going to give people in your group that you know and trust a job as opposed to someone from another group or another tribe. So if Black America is depending on white America to help them, you're no different than the Jets waiting for the Pittsburgh Steelers to help you. All the talk I hear about people saying, "Oh, this is trauma from slavery." If you know this, at what point do you unlearn that so that it's no longer holding you back? To just keep saying, we've got this going on from slate. Like at some point, you need to be in action, and you can't go to the other team for help. So your team needs to set up structures, social structures, professional structures that allow you to transform your own team so that they can actually be in action to create their own economic power. Because ultimately, that's what this is going to be about. Can your team feed itself? Can it clothe itself? Does it have drinking water? Does it have food? Can you create jobs in your community? Are you taking that financial money you're taking and creating it, using it as economic power to be able to hire lobbyists to write laws that protect the businesses in your community and the people? If you're not thinking that way, then the question is, what are you talking about?
Good analogy of the Jets versus Jets waiting on the Pittsburgh Steelers, because that's not happening anytime soon. But go ahead, Phil.
No, the The Pittsburgh Steelers will take your money. You want to pay us to help you? Sure, man. Come on in. We'll show you all the things, and all they'll do is teach you how to be dysfunctional and laugh all the way to the bank. They'll take your money.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I do have a question for you, and it's the title. Do you believe marriage under 30 is more important than over 30?
Yes, especially for women. And it's. So I said this maybe on your last live stream. If you're a man or a woman, you need to understand that you are like an enterprise and you are providing a service to someone. And you need to understand what that service is and make sure that's your target market and that you can give it to them. So if you are built equal to a Hyundai, don't try to get a Rolls Royce customer. You need to know what you offer and what your market is, who your correct demographics are, and then prepare yourself for that. If you really set your life up for a Rolls Royce, then yes, you need to do that before 30, because men are telling you all over the world. This isn't just black men. It's not just the United States. In China, they call it a shen nu. You pass 27 and you're called a leftover. This has always been happening. So if women want to ignore what the marketplace is saying, then you will pay the price after 30. But if you understand that you're providing a service and your target market wants you before you hit 30, then we go back to your original statement, which is in high school, you need to learn what to look for. So that when you're in college, or if you don't go to college, whatever you do, that you're looking for men who meet this certain criteria. And if the clowns see that all the women are serious about marriage and they're looking for guys that meet a certain level of maturity and intelligence, then the clowns will have to do something, or they'll just play with the welfare mamas, and they'll eventually society will build a wall around them and never let them out.
Do you think that's likely to happen, Ted? If the older women continue to tell younger women that that they don't need to be married?
You're saying if the older women keep telling younger women?
Yeah.
The cycle will repeat, but here's what women need to understand. Women are not your customers. You need to find out what your customers are saying. And if your customers, if the older women are conflicting with your customers, then you need to maybe start to think, if these older women are my competitors and they're just giving me bad advice and I'll never get the customer I want.
There you go. New York Jets versus Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, when women are going to other women for advice and they're not realizing that they're really talking to their competitors.
And that's why I said a lot of young women, if you don't have your father, you need to get a guy who's got his head on straight and help you and be honest with you. Don't just go to women all the time. Look, LeTisha does this for a living. She's good at it. But younger women need to talk to, I've on her show, I've asked the woman, you come from a 2-parent household. What role did your father play in you vetting this guy? Like why wouldn't you lean on your father? I think we live in a society that's too dismissive of men. I lived in Mexico for almost 2 years. I was 34. I was seeing a woman. I was 35. She was 34. A 34-year-old woman asked me to ask her father if I could date her. She said, "You go talk to my father first."
It's funny. I was talking about that, how in the past, a man, that was the price of access. You did not pass go. You did not collect $200 unless and until you go and you talk to that father. And as much as, there's been this whole villainization of patriarchy, that was one mechanism within patriarchy that I think was meant to filter out the wheat from the chaff, as far as who who a woman should be dealing with. And if he doesn't have the chops to at least, come and interface with your dad, right? Everybody's got that scene, especially when you're taking a daughter out for prom or whatever. But that was a mechanism, and that, I think, is one of the ways in which, again, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, right? We get it. Women don't like patriarchy. They feel like it's wrong for all these reasons. But that was one aspect that was like, nah, this one actually served a function. And it's not to say necessarily that your dad is going to choose on your behalf. It's not like arranged marriage or anything, but you need that filter of a man who is not just who you admire and respect, but is not sexually interested in you as well. So like, if it's not your father, potentially your uncle, potentially a mentor or a coach, but like, but yeah, women don't do that. They don't, they've lost that art altogether. So it's interesting that they still have it in Mexico though.
I think it's more than just women. I just think and probably the 60s created that generation divide. Started looking at older people as the enemy, and you don't know you have nothing to tell us. And in some ways you can kind of understand, because you could say in the 1950s, people started going to college and majoring in, well, let me step back. Normally what you did as a profession is what your father or your mother did. I mean, that's, your father was an attorney, you were an attorney. He was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. He was a fireman, so were you. But then these different majors and aeronautics engineering and physics and all these new discoveries created new majors, and your father couldn't give you the career advice like he could have if you just followed his footsteps. So that started to create the divide as well. Like, you can't help me. You're just old and outdated, and I'm into something very different, or I don't want to run the family business, kind of thing.
All right. Oh, okay. British. You're on mute.
I'm just listening right now. I think all of these conversations, I've come to the conclusion that, going back to my roots of my work, everything is downstream of financial incentives. So while all of these conversations are valuable, for me, they're completely irrelevant until the financial incentives are fixed because of the world that we live in. So at this point, I think every man I agree with that every man should find a good woman and be with her, and focus on his career and stop being distracted by irrelevance. At the same time, I think every man should be extremely careful with the world that we have right now. It's not in most cases it's not conducive. It's not incentivized for a man to get married, and we're seeing that because marriage rates are dropping. Incentives run everything, and trying to have a conversation against trillions of dollars of advertising that is creating the incentives, to me, is irrelevant. I don't think these young women want marriage, but I look forward to finding the one that I find that does, and that I connect with, and then being out of it, because I don't think it's worth talking to women that weren't raised for marriage anymore. I don't think it's. I don't. I think the I think the Reformation is a lie, and if it's not a lie, I don't think I deserve a reformed woman. I think I deserve one who was raised to be the wife that I want her to be. I don't think you can suddenly reverse the fact that you've slept with 20 guys and then now you're reformed. I don't agree with that. Don't accept that.
Well, and you also know that marriage rates are not dropping amongst the affluent. So, as a man or a woman, are you prepared to marry someone from that social class? Do you understand how to vet someone? Do you know how to bring value to someone like that? And that is a conversation for both men and women, because that's where women and men are bred for marriage, and they understand the finances involved in that, like a merger of two families. And so you can talk prenuptial agreements and trusts and all that stuff. They understand these things.
Yeah, you know. Um, so for me, it's like if I was to give a blueprint to a guy, a younger man, it would be don't even try until you are in a position where you can actually negotiate from a position of strength. I think that's wise advice. Same thing for a woman. But women think that their position of strength comes when they're 35. It might do for some, depending on the type of man you want. But for a biological woman that wants the type of man that a woman 1.0 has been wanting for eternity, not these women 2.0s with penises. I think that for that type of woman, if you just want something that history has inspired, you need to do it much earlier than you think. And so for me as a guy, I've come to the conclusion that unless I find the anomaly, a woman that's in her 30s that has been, as Thomas likes to say, often ran through, um, is probably just going to be off the scorecard for me. It's not worth the risk.
So then you've accepted that your dating pool is going to be extremely small.
No, I've accepted that my dating pool is going to refresh every single year.
Right, but it's still going to be small
No,
because
it's not.
when you're looking at women, okay, so I'm going to speak for the US. When you're looking at women who have been raised to be wives, you've eliminated 99.99% of the population, female population.
I think you can have an exception when a woman is 23, 24 years old. Because if she's 23, 24 years old and hasn't been on the carousel, but she just hasn't been raised to be a wife, but she has the desire to be married, I think that woman can be helped. I think a woman who is 29 to 39, who is now like suddenly, oh, I'm now reformed, I think that is the risk category.
But do 22, 23-year-olds want men of significant age that are like 10, 12, 15 years older than them?
Yes, there are women like that. Um, and I don't want to say, British, that it's easy, because the criteria I'm going to give you kind of makes it a little more difficult. Um, and these are not the kind of women who are walking around with signs on them. But here's what I've found: there's a level of intelligence that a woman can bring to the table, and this is to LeTisha's point. It's a small percentage. So only 2% of the population has a high IQ. Of that 2%, 80%, approximately 80% are men, 20% are women. And when you meet those women, like you were saying, you were saying it's better to have a 35 or, over 30 woman who has some work experience and she's got her head straight. But a woman who fits in that top 2%, she could be 23, 24, 22 years old. And what she has from high intelligence is this pattern recognition and the capacity to extrapolate beyond what's in front of her. And because she's so intelligent, she's not going to fit in to a lot of groups. So she's going to be maybe somewhat of a loner. She's not going to hit it off with a lot of guys. She's going to see a lot of guys as clowns, and she will have realized early on that she's more mature than most people, and a guy who's older than her will be a better match, and especially if he's intelligent and she can have the kinds of conversations that turn her on, and she could be of value. She would also want to add value to you. So uh, you British, you could find a woman under 25 with a high IQ, and she will not have ridden that carousel. Most likely not. She will not be hanging with a whole bunch of uh, uh, girls hanging out for girls' night and getting drunk and doing one night stands and all that stuff. So I think she would have a greater capacity to understand the things you're saying, and I think it was Phil who was saying, she would be much more coachable.
I agree. My ex was fit exactly the.
Oh, so you know what I'm talking about.
Of course,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So that's your target market. Now, where do you look for those women? Maybe you go to conferences for physicists or mathematics. Women who have PhDs in biology or chemistry, astronomy. They could be in anything. I've met women who were in business or history majors and had I'm assuming they were over 150 in their IQs. They were just brilliant women, but there just aren't a lot of them. And thank you, LeTisha.
The good news is, for me and Thomas, who is on the stage, at least, I mean, I don't know about anyone else. That's why I said me and Thomas, is that while they are rare, there is a new stock of them coming in every single year, unlike the ones that are being expired. And on top of that, we're still rarer.
No question.
That's understandable, but that still doesn't denote that the further we go in society, the more we progress, the further women get away from the values of marriage. And that's just been proven over time, because even the more traditionally married, the marriages, the countries that we've known to be traditionally inclined towards marriage, the women were bred to be that way. I'm hearing men in those countries struggle.
LeTisha, the good news for me is I'm only looking for one, and I know how funnels work.
Absolutely. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Thomas.
What's up, Thomas?
Just a friendly reminder that there is no cussing to everyone.
Maybe, absolutely.
So, Thomas, I have a question. Thank you for joining. Is marriage under 30 more important than over 30?
Well, that's a very, very good question. To me, a lot of times it depends because of the fact that, again, as most people on the stage, I'm pretty sure are well aware, most men are not in a financial position to be able to do what needs to be done when it comes to the confines of marriage at 30, most of the time. So, are you asking for both the men and women, or just women in general? Because for women, I agree, but for men, a lot of times men are not in the financial position to be able to take care of a household the way it's supposed to be taken care of at 30, usually. So I think if you're talking about both groups, the men need more time usually to kind of marinate in that pot. But most of the time, the ladies don't necessarily need that type of time to be able to be, because their jobs are different when it comes to being a wife. So for ladies, I would say it would behoove them to get married before 30. For men, it's not as much because, again, they need to make sure they're in the right financial position before they're even able to make that decision.
Thomas, I said earlier that if a man by the age of 30 is on the trajectory to be in that top 20% income bracket by 35, then he should not get married. If a man by the age of 30 is not in that trajectory, then he should get married.
I understand that. I can agree with that. It's just, again, it's a lot of men, and again, British, we've had these conversations ad nauseum on other social media websites. And I don't think, well, I won't say that. I won't say that. I do agree. But again, if they have a trajectory, then that's fine. If not, then it wouldn't behoove them to do so. Not in my opinion.
Well, there's another perspective to that. So if you're 30 and you're working in corporate America and your intent is to climb the corporate ladder, not being married will work against you.
That is true, 100%. If you're in the corporate world.
Right.
But again, if you're in the corporate world, depending on what branch of the corporate world you're in, like, would it still behoove you to be married if you're not in certain, let's just say, in certain positions in the corporate world? Because I
Well,
think a
that's
lot
why
of it depends. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just saying that's why I said if you're on a fast track to move up the ladder, if you don't care about that, that's different. But if you're ambitious, if you're the guy that British is talking about, most likely you're ambitious and you're on some sort of fast track and you're going to be moving up, whether it's that company or someone else recruits you, and they will be looking for you to be married.
Agreed.
I mean, when I was in corporate America, our CFO was always saying to me, "Hey, man, you know, your taxes. When are you going to get married?" He was on me as much as my grandmother.
I was going to say, I mean, I have a more recent corporate experience. That doesn't seem to be quite as. I mean, you still see it, but you also see a lot of guys get put on high potential track who are not. They're single. They ain't got no kids. They got, and in some respects, I think corporate is willing to take advantage of somebody who doesn't necessarily, but they have a lot of discretionary time and energy to put into the role and into the job.
Listen, here's the thing: you don't get invited to social affairs, because then you become the single guy who's seen like the shark who could possibly be picking off other men's wives. You don't get invited to the social events.
There's an incentive for marriage for men who are in corporate America and trying to climb the social track.
There's no incentive for marriage.
Well, these are generally, so when I speak to CEOs of middle market companies, here's it, and this is it plays out. The top executives they're married. I was going to say 99%. They're married unless they are of same sex into the same sex, heterosexual. They're married, and their divorce rates are extremely low.
So,
and you're talking about. Oh, go ahead, Mr. LeTisha. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, even with the affluent class in and of itself, like if you're striving to be a part of that socioeconomic class, right? Marriage, just look at the difference in culture, right? The affluent, those who are well off, they still push and promote marriage, whereas the not so well off, average job, professions and stuff, they're not pushing marriage. But yet it seems as if all the women want very successful men at some point in their lives, but they themselves don't have the mindset of, I need to be wife ready, right? I need to understand marriage and actually understanding what it takes to be married to someone in that socioeconomic class. But to me, it's just still looking at the point that while we're looking at the marriage rates being low, the divorce rates being high, amongst the affluent, that is not the case. What's the difference?
Well, you also need to make sure you have a wife who's ready. Because I had a college buddy who worked for one of the big four consulting firms, and this is what I mean by social affairs. His boss invited him to his house for a dinner. It was just going to be his boss's wife, my buddy, and his wife. And my buddy's wife felt like she didn't belong with those people and she didn't want to go. And that hindered his career. There were some other things how she hindered it, but she was not prepared to be married to a highly ambitious, successful guy. So men have to watch. You don't just get married to a woman because she's pretty and has a degree. She's got to fit in if you're climbing, and my buddy was climbing that social ladder, he what was he? Probably very early 30s, and doors were opening. And when you get the invitation from some higher up to have dinner at their house, they are grooming you. And being married is in your best interest. But if you're married to the wrong person, you've got the whole ball and chain around your neck who's going to choke the life out of you.
I've never been in.
To
Go ahead, Thomas. I'll ask after.
and to Mr. Santos's to Mr. Santos and Berto's point, I think it's very interesting because I can agree that the majority of the individuals within the VP and the suite areas, positions, I should say, they are in relationships or married. But I will say this: I do believe there is a growing group of individuals who are not, to Mr. Berto's point. And I don't know if that has more to do with today's climate, if you will, than like maybe of yesteryear, if you will. But I do see a lot of individuals that are coming up that social ladder that do not have the usual relationship that you will be used to seeing in those positions, because I understand where Mr. Santos is coming from. You do see that more often than not. But I will say that, to Mr. Berto's point, I have seen what seems like a fluctuation of individuals that are climbing up that corporate ladder that are single. Do you think that has something to do more with the climate we're in, Mr. Santos, or do you don't think it's much of an issue at all?
You're mute.
You're on mute.
You're
on mute, Mr. Santos.
Okay. Yes, you have a point, and I can't comment on the future. But what you may find is being set up is that in the future, the only people who are going to be in the top executive positions will be people from the affluent class who married, and then the people who are not getting married will almost make it, and they will have a glass ceiling. All right, and that could be broken, but I don't think it's going to be broken in the 2020s.
I don't have any corporate background, so I'm asking the question. Ted, do you think that your corporate career was disadvantaged because you weren't married?
Maybe in the way they may have handled me in certain situations, if I was married, it would have been different. But they were, like I said, the CFO wasn't hinting, he was saying flat out, you need to
why
get
didn't
married.
you?
Huh?
Why didn't you?
Because I was living with a woman, and I knew that I was going to leave the country. Like that, I knew from a child I was going to live abroad. I lost both parents at 21. That took my life in a different direction. My youngest sister lived with me, and then I had to reset my life and start over. So the age at which I thought I would have married was the age my sister graduated high school, and my life was back. So I kind of took a detour, and I lived with someone for several years, and then I left the country. So like that was something I had to do for my own personal experience.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that's fair. I think Darby makes a good point in the comments, and that is that the corporate incentive doesn't outweigh the risk of divorce caused by long hours and travel and the demands of that career, which is it's a pretty interesting comment, because I think that when you are living a corporate career that is giving you a reasonable income, and that's not just increasing your income at slightly higher than the inflation rate and therefore keeping you broke, right? I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that even if they're earning $250,000 a year, after they've paid taxes, after they've paid higher costs of living and everything else that's going on, they really should be making, I don't know, $320 a year, and they're not. And I think that combined with the BS that you have to deal with when it comes to women who are not ready for marriage and not incentivized for marriage. I don't know whether that formula works itself out or not.
But
So I
here's
thought that was
the
an interesting
thing:
comment.
at that level, right? The affluent class, those marriage rates are holding steady,
Exactly.
and then the divorce
I
rates
agree.
are not increasing, right? So there can, and then you do see a lot of corporate.
But hold on, LeTisha, we're switching conversations now. Firstly, this is why I said, are we talking about high value men or not? Because for a guy who is successful, marriage is always incentivized. But a guy who's coming up the ranks, which is what I thought we were talking about when it comes to a guy trying to work his way up the corporate ladder, I don't know what his incentive structure is like. And I also don't know what the women he'd be going for, what their incentive structure is like.
Well, I think we keep changing because you initiated the average man, so we're talking about that, and then
Well,
it's
then that's completely clear in my mind. The average guy who does not have the financial bandwidth to negotiate in a relationship is not incentivized to be married at this point unless he can find a woman who was raised for marriage when she was younger. But if he has to ever even convince a woman that we should get married, he should walk away from that immediately.
Yep, well said. Well said.
Fact. That's a whole
Uh,
fact.
so here's the question, British. If the average man wants to marry a woman from an affluent class who is bred for marriage, why would she choose him instead of another guy from her own social class?
She won't.
Because well, no, she's been bred. This is a very interesting psychological shift that's happened. I learned this watching a video that LeTisha sent me, and that is that she has been bred through the conditioning to think that romance is more important than it is. So she will pick that guy because her attraction levers have been messed with chemically and psychologically. And she will pick that guy because he is more romantic than the guy who is successful, more successful than him.
I would say generally no. She
And
might.
pick to marriage, pick for marriage, British, or just
Yeah.
kind of deal with.
Yeah, there's I know many women that have come from wealthy families who have picked guys that are less affluent than them because he was more quote unquote romantic. Now that's my experience, of course, but that's what I think it is.
Really, they came from affluent classes and still fell for the lower
Yeah,
class.
they call them the lovable losers, the lovable
Right.
losers. Yeah.
This is
So
in
yeah,
this is my age range, right? Oh, this is like in the 25 to 35 range.
Now, are these women rebels in any way in their family?
Maybe one or two of them, but on the whole, they're just women who are out here that have their own career, but they come from a wealthy family. They're in this matrix that we have right now of the propaganda that we have, and they pick a guy who comes from a less affluent background because they don't trust their dad's opinion. And it all goes back to the incentives in my mind. That's why I always say to LeTisha, like, it's the incentives at the end of the day. There's no incentives there for women to actually want to get married. There's more incentives for other things. There's more incentive for a woman to marry a guy who's romantic because at least he will spend his last penny on taking her on a holiday that she can put on Instagram.
But see, that's why I asked, are they rebels? If she doesn't trust her father's opinion, then she's a rebel.
Well,
She's
in
rebelling
in your
against her
Ted,
father.
in your generation, that was known as a rebel. In my generation, that's known as the status quo.
I understand. Listen, no, my generation started that. Well, actually, the generation before me started that.
The rebel in my generation is the one that goes, "You need to speak to my dad before you take me out."
Look, he's 100% right. That's what I was saying with regards to throwing out the baby with the bathwater. They don't do that these days. I think LeTisha keep beating the drum that look, these women have been lied to. It's good that you're getting the responsiveness that you've had from letting them know and pressing this upon this. But yeah, it's backwards. We're upside down.
Darby made another good point. He said, these women could be doing that because they have daddy's money to fall back on. That's absolutely a reason. I know a girl, and again, it's an N of one example here, but she basically told me that she's marrying this guy, even though he's not successful, because they'll be fine and they can just live in her parents' house because her dad raised her to basically be a son. Her dad raised her to go out and to create this lifestyle and not worry about, getting married to a guy that can look after her because he knew that he was going to be her savior.
But this has to be like this is, well, not has to be, this is the extreme minority, because if we're talking like, again, well-to-do women, that do that, which again is, I find very fascinating, because again, I'm kind of curious about, British, how long do those like partnerships last? Because usually the lady gets like that Leonardo DiCaprio Titanic romance wears off. Okay, the lovable loser is only hot for so long, and so, and usually, yeah, go ahead.
It's not, but the problem is that these women come from cultures where they have been shamed to think that divorce is not a good thing. So until that idea gets to that culture, they'll stay in the relationship, even though it's not completely satisfying, because their dad's resources are buffering the lack of resources that their husband has.
But see, what you described is a woman who was not bred for marriage.
To a certain
And
extent,
are the fathers okay with this? Are the father, because I'm trying to think of I don't know a lot of fathers that would be cool with that,
listen,
with that type of situation. Go ahead, bro.
I'm telling you right now, me and you would be cool with it, because if I had a daughter, right? If I had a daughter and she told me, right, I'm gonna marry this guy, and then she was struggling, I would be the first one to step in to help. So would you?
Sure, but I don't want to use me as an anecdotal example.
No, but that's the real shit. So these dads have told them, instead of suffering with an idiot, I will help. It's the dad's fault. But what else do you expect him to do?
And the other thing, not even affluent, you can just say upper middle class. There are a lot of dads who are paying car notes, rent, more. And these women are living these lifestyles they cannot afford because their fathers supplement. They're basically living on welfare from their father.
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier as well, Ted, before you came in. A woman who's earning $40,000 a year, regardless of her family, even with credit cards nowadays, she's now living the lifestyle of $150,000 a year, right? And so for her, a guy who's making less than 150K a year can't even keep up with the lifestyle that she's giving herself, and she thinks she's I was going to say the F word, but she thinks she's earned it. But she doesn't understand there's debt, right? But because in her reality, like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm living, it is what it is. So now she of course wants the guy who's making $250,000 a year.
Right.
British, it might be too early for me to say because my daughter's only 5, but I don't think I'm doing it. I mean, that's kind of why she and I already have this understanding.
You gonna let her on the streets?
No, well, we already have the understanding that I'm gonna help her choose. So at this point, yeah. So I mean, but I don't see myself doing that. Presuming we see that one all the way through, and I help you choose, it's not even gonna be. You're not gonna come back to me with that. But if or you do your own thing, then that's. You're left to your devices with that one.
Yeah, that's why it's good to kind of try to do your best as men to make sure that your daughters don't pick a gentleman like that, because no guy wants to be in that situation, because it's tough. Trust and believe. I don't have no kids, but I can sympathize and empathize with a gentleman who may be in that position and that doesn't want to see their daughters starving. Okay, so because daddy's little girl is a real thing. So again, it's a troubling situation. Because especially with this issue of society and the social climate we're in, it's very difficult to keep her on the straight and narrow. It's going to be very difficult, man, because of just everything that she's going to be bombarded with as she's growing up.
So does that mean we're just gonna, if we find out that our wives are pregnant with a daughter, we're gonna say no, like China? Is that what you're trying to? Is that what you're trying to encourage, Thomas?
Actually,
absolutely not.
British, I just read what is it O'Hara put in the chat. I would probably do that. I would probably help out, like if I, with my company, like employing, if my daughter and her guy fell on hard times,
Mailroom?
I would do that. I would
Well,
probably, I could
that's all
see
we're
a
talking
mutual.
about.
But it is, I guess technically that would constitute what you're saying. So I don't
It's
know.
a
There's a
tough one.
limit to mine,
It's a
though.
tough
I'm
one.
not. There's a limit to mine. If you're not bringing any value, you're not getting it off of GP.
But here's the other addition to what you said. If you, and my uncle went through this, if you help your daughter pick a guy and then he's the wrong guy, you now have the responsibility and the duty to help.
I
Whereas,
can get down with that.
right, you have the duty because you messed up. She didn't mess up. You messed up, Phil. And my uncle had to deal with this situation where he had to jump in and help a couple situations because he's the one who helped pick the guy that she married.
But is that an arranged marriage situation, or is that just like
No.
I approve?
There's
who
no
you
real.
bring?
There's no like. Even though I'm African Indian, like there's no real arranged marriages anymore, right? It's more like an introduction.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I follow the logic of it. If it's somebody, I don't see it as, and that's why I asked for that distinction, because I'm not proposing that I'm arranging a marriage for her. But yeah, I agree. If with my input, I steered you towards a gentleman for whom that didn't work out, I can see, like you said, I can see feeling a certain responsibility, but I still feel like there's a limit to what that should look like, right? So, if it's employment in my company, cool, all day, every day, right? Beyond that, though, that's pushing it. I think you need men to have space to stand as close as possible on his own too, if he's going to be a worthy candidate for your daughter.
Yeah, because again, I know that's gonna. This is why, and again, I don't have any kids yet, but in an ideal situation, how I would like to be if I don't allow my emotions for my daughter to get in the way, is have a form of situation to where I basically kind of vet a bunch of dudes during, as she's growing up, like within the neighborhood, et cetera, and whatnot, to kind of have a prime candidates for her. And potentially she'll pick one of those. And then I would be willing to, again, do my part as getting the car, not even putting a down payment on a house, buying the house, et cetera, to make sure that they're good starting off. Now, if she, brings home, Duracell or battery, talking about, I like him, he's an aspiring rapper, and, and all this other goofy shit, it's going to rub me the wrong way so much that I would probably be like, listen, if you're going to choose him, I'm going to want to give her an ultimatum. If you're going to want to choose him, then my resources stay with me. That's going to be a prime resource of handler for now on. If that's what you're going to choose. If she's going to be defiant in that way, that's what I would like to do in a perfect situation. But again, I don't have any kids, and I would like to think I would be able to stand on mine like that. But again, I know myself that it would be very difficult almost impossible for me to do that to my daughter.
Listen, as British said, and maybe we're projecting out, right? 15, 20 years in the case of my daughter. But yeah, the women of today, they're more likely to go against what your dad wants anyway. So again, that's why I'm starting early, and I'm unashamedly so in impressing this upon my daughter that this is what the expectation is going to be, because when they get to that level, they don't value the patriarch. They don't value the fathers. The average woman doesn't. So all of that is to be considered.
Well, the interesting thing is when he really does have to qualify through your father, as British was saying before, the guy could be romantic with a woman in an affluent class, and he could be full of just BS, right? So when he knows the right things to say and the right things to do, and she's got all the oxytocin and dopamine running, and she thinks she loves the guy, and the father sees something else because the father doesn't care about the player moves. But Phil, there's maybe another way to look at it, and I've actually seen this from clients, and I've met quite a few women who their fathers had a significant business, and the woman married a guy who would eventually take over the company. So, as the daughter of the CEO of a company, she's looking for a guy. So she's being bred, like, not that she's being sat down in a class and, say, look for this, that, what she's being bred by her mother. She's being taught by what she sees, their conversations that are happening. And she's going to see certain patterns and have distinctions for a man who is the caliber of her father. He doesn't have to be like her father, but she's going to look for certain things that she likes in her father that she'll want to see in a guy who she marries and eventually takes over dad's company with the intent he'll take it to its next level and be successful. And, she'll have that lifestyle that her mother had and that she grew up with. That's a woman who would have a better idea of what she's looking for and really looking for a guy who's going to be responsible and can step in her father's shoes. And the father is probably going to have some say. If he says, look, this guy is a clown and he's just going to run the company in the ground, there's a good chance she may walk away from that guy.
Can't be a rapper.
Yo, you would think so. Here's the thing. You know what's funny? And this is exactly to British's point. We were just talking to a woman on the app. I feel like I should change names to protect the innocent. But anyway, she's based in the Oregon area. Her dad has a business. He's kind of known in that area for his business. And they're kind of like what do you call those things, like a fixture, like a pillar of the community kind of deal. Anyway, she's so Oregon, you imagine the demographic of Oregon, but she's into a certain type of guy. The last guy she brought home is a dude who has like tattoos all over his face and blah blah blah. But this guy who she did date, who was kind of more of her family's and her parents' ilk, I guess he misses her, and he called her dad, and the dad lobbied on his behalf that that he misses her and that she should reconsider things. And I'm like, does your dad have any sons? She's like, no, he doesn't have any sons. And I'm like, so what you're missing is that it's not that, for instance, this guy who has the tattoos on his face and may have a decent real estate business or tour business and make pretty decent money. It's not that he necessarily wants you to be unhappy. It's that he's thinking in terms of succession. He's thinking of who is going to be a man who potentially can take over this business, which you don't seem to have any interest in doing. She doesn't have that mindset at all. She doesn't have that mindset of like, she just wants what she wants. She has no regard for any of her dad's considerations in that. She just doesn't understand it. And I tried to help her understand it as a dad. Right. I don't even own a business like that. But again, that's my mindset. I'm like, oh, this is the part that you're missing. She can't see it. She can't see it for the life of her. And it is exactly to the point. They're going for, what did you call it? Is it the lovable loser, or romance more so than the pragmatism and practicality of, well, my dad has this. It's effectively going to be his legacy, right? Your names are going to change. His name is not going to live on. He doesn't have any sons. So this business is really kind of what he's got. And, at least if he can, kind of leave it to a man who would marry his daughter. And that's something that, would give him some solace perhaps. But yeah, no, she's more interested in, the guy who makes her loins throb and all of that.
Right.
So
does her father want to sell that business? What is the business? Maybe that'll be a good deal in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, it might be. I didn't get into that level, but I'll probably ask her. I'll probably jump on Clubhouse tonight and see because, hey, maybe it'll be one that I take over and have ready potentially for my daughter's husband. Who knows? But
can we blame her for having that mindset growing up in that environment? Because a lot of women growing up in that environment, especially when they're daddy's girl, I would assume that a lot of these girls don't have that type of pressure to take into consideration the business, the family company. They're out because they've already been given everything. They're not really having to really work for much, if anything at all. So only thing they have to worry about is who's going to be Prince Charming.
Well, depends. Like, does the father have sons, capable, competent sons that can step in once he, has to step down? So it is important just because she's a girl and she may not head the family business. She needs to marry someone who understands the family business. She needs to understand, she needs someone who understands that she may inherit some things that being married to her means he needs to be wise with those things. He can't mishandle those things. So even though she's a girl, she can't just focus on him just being Prince Charming. She has to focus on will he be able to carry on my father's legacy? Right. Even if he's not stepping in and heading the company, but there's still some aspects of his legacy that her husband will have to step in and take on.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. This will be extremely anecdotal, but I'll say this. I know one individual personally who, going back to the Rebel conversation, she completely, her dad owns a pretty prosperous company, but she does very well. But she, because of the climate that she's in, she feels like her dad's company is contributing to more like turmoil than she feels like is appropriate. So she's completely rebelling. So that her dad's legacy doesn't really matter to her because she looks at her dad's company as a problem, okay, to society. Because again, she has the privilege within her position, not really having to worry about anything, that she can think like this and get away with it.
Then that would be a failure on the parents, especially the mother, right? Because the role of a mother is to help the children understand dad's legacy, right? And to constantly, because women are going to be the first educators of their children from a young age, instill in them the importance of the legacy and dad's legacy. You may not have to agree with it, you may have to like it, but you need to respect it. You need to understand this is where your bread and butter comes from. This is how we eat. This is how your children and grandchildren are going to be able to live. So you need to protect that and make sure that legacy continues on. So in that case, that would be a failure on the parents, especially the mother, not educating her properly on the family legacy. Because you can instill in young kids legacy. I'm a Christian, and I do believe that you raise your children in the way that you want to go. You teach them, not just raise them. You teach them in the way that you want them to go, so they won't stray far. And when you do focus on certain aspects, instilling values and principles in them, and not just letting them be, trying to figure out life completely on their own, and having a more laissez-faire approach to parenting, they will get it. They will grow up and take on the legacy. I remember my ex-fiance, he grew his excavation building business into a multi-million-dollar business. But his ex failed in raising their son in trying to take on that business as he got older. And so when the father got to him as a teenager and tried to instill that in him and saying, look, listen, this is our legacy. This is going to be passed down for you and your children. He didn't get it. He didn't grasp onto it. Why? Because the mother didn't teach her son, didn't instill that in her son. And because mothers are going to be mostly around the children, teaching the children, we're the ones who really should focus hard on letting our kids know and driving home the importance of legacy, the importance of wifehood, the importance of marriage. Yes, your father is going to do some vetting. Yes, your father is going to be looking at these men and saying this and approving these men. But the mother plays an essential role as to the information that goes into her daughter's head, because regardless of what you guys think, we will listen to our mothers more so than our fathers, more times than not.
Well, I will say this, just a side note. I think her whole family graduated from Princeton as well, but she graduated from Princeton. So like she's supposed to be educated, but again, this can kind of go back to why her mentality is the way that it is. So again, and her parents have not cut her off, even though they're well aware of her thought process. They haven't cut her off. She still goes out and does whatever she wants to do, deal with whoever she wants to, and it's still on mommy and daddy's dime.
Yeah, well. So let me ask you, would any of you want your successful, would any of you marry a woman like that? Or, you know, you had sons, would you want your son to marry a woman with that mindset?
Absolutely not.
I can't hear. So I heard somebody say something, but it sounded like it was underwater.
Can y'all hear me, or is my headphones going out?
Okay, we can hear you now.
No, I said
Absolutely not.
Okay. So Darby asks, how does the mother mother teach that to the kids? Could you give a couple examples? It's just basically her having conversations with her children. First, getting her children to understand daddy's very busy, daddy's very powerful, daddy has to do this, daddy has to do that. When the kids are asking for daddy and daddy can't be there, instead of her kowtowing to their feelings and their emotions, she needs to step in and explain to them the importance of why daddy is not there. Daddy can't be here right now because daddy has a job to do, just like mommy has a job. Mommy's job is to be right here. Daddy's job is to be away, and daddy's job does X, Y, and Z. As they get older, those conversations become more in depth, more adding more nuance and context. So then as the kids get older, when they're frustrated about daddy not being there, or daddy, you know, going to the office and trying to act like brats, no, you have to correct that behavior and say, there's no point in you getting frustrated about your father not being here, because if your father was here, you wouldn't have the lifestyle you have, right? So it's very important for the mother to protect the father and what he is doing, what he has going on, and not give in to her children's feelings of frustration, being upset, being angry, being disappointed. She needs to have conversations where she's correcting that. And I know a lot of people probably going to be like, oh my gosh, you mean to tell me the kids can't feel how they feel? No, because their feelings are illogical. What does their feelings have to do with the fact that their father is creating this legacy that allows them to have the privilege of the lifestyle that they're having? And the mother needs to instill that this is a privilege, and this is only a privilege we have because what daddy is doing. And then she needs to start talking to them about who might be well, if she has sons, she needs to start talking to them about how they will eventually be groomed to take on the legacy, the head of the family at one point when daddy steps down, the company, whatever he has going on. The same thing that Queen Elizabeth has done with Charles. Charles was groomed from a young age to be king. That same principle can be instilled in children from very successful families where, yes, the father's going to step down and one of the children have to take that on. So the sons will have to be groomed for that. The daughters will have to be groomed to marry men who are going to be able to handle the responsibility of being married into that family. It's too many times that I've seen where women have chosen the wrong man to marry into their family, and that man has done nothing but dragged her down to where she can't even focus on her father's legacy because she's focusing on trying to pull her husband up to where she's at. So yes, bringing the little ones to the office, to the factory, those are great examples. Having them around as far as the father permits, having them, yeah. And then as teenagers, right, you need to be working up under daddy, as an intern, or, the girls can be as secretaries or something. The boys can be interning, getting that education and learning, if not just from their daddy, but from the people that are hired there, putting them in places to where they get used to that environment. And it takes the mother, because she's going to have the children close to her, but she needs to let them go for a moment and allow them to step into the environment that the father has established, so that they can get used to it, they can get acclimated to it, and they understand the importance of that legacy. So it is very important as to whom you choose as a wife, because your wife will be educating your children, and the wife will determine, for most part, for more than you like to think, in which direction the children will go as they get older. Parents who don't move like this, who don't put their children, who do not instill a sense of duty, honor when it comes to the family name, the family legacy, and just letting them do whatever they want to do and get away with it, those children tend to fall by the wayside. Those children tend to go in life and then allow other people to take over the business as they get older, because they can't do it, because they didn't learn. They didn't think that it was important to learn. So I agree. So
There's the other thing, adding to everything you said, LeTisha, which is the conversations that happen at the dinner table between the husband and wife. The kids they're listening more than you think, and as they get older, they understand more, and it just becomes part of them, understanding finance, understanding operations, understanding how to deal with people and problems. That those children grow up with a very different mindset, because they've already been introduced to these conversations, in addition to what you're saying, take them to the office. Years ago, I worked with this Jewish woman who was, I think, 27 or 28. She was engaged, and she was telling me basically what you're saying, that she was talking about how her fiance travels quite a bit for work, but she was okay with that because she said her father traveled a lot, and she knew that that was one of the ways her father expressed his love for his family, his children, by being gone and working a lot. So she was not fazed by that. So I can only imagine the conversations her mother had. As you were saying, the children said, "Oh, I want to see daddy. Where's daddy? Oh, your father's working, and this is how your father shows us love, and we have this lifestyle." So yeah, the mother's extremely important. If she's complaining and saying, "I feel like a single mother," then the children will resent a guy like that, and they'll end up picking what British was saying, the loser guy, the romantic loser. So yeah, mothers are extremely important.
well, everyone, I would say that I think it's time to bring this stream to a close. It's been a great conversation. I just wish I would have had more women. They're actually in my back channel. They're actually DMing me. They don't want to come on stage. But ladies,
Why not? Why don't they want to come on stage?
I don't know. I don't know why.
Do they think we're gonna beat them up mentally, verbally? Are they afraid of us?
I don't know. I don't know. But they're asking questions and they're commenting in my DMs, which I don't mind. But ladies, I just wish you would come up on stage and join us on stage. It makes the conversation well-rounded, balanced, and I think it's important that men get to actually hear from you, so that you are the subject matter, right? But maybe next time, join us again next Sunday, July 16th, again at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, you like the channel, and you like the video, and you share, right? That helps the channel to grow, and the more the channel grows, the more people who can see, then the more information, more value you will receive from the channel, right? If you would like to support the channel monetarily, you can send me a cash app at money $, the matchmaker, or at PayPal, the matchmaker at twoheartsexclusive.com. So until next time, thank you, all my panelists, Ted, Kaya, Phil, and anyone else who joined. Thank you, Chaos. Thank you, Chaos, for becoming one of my moderators. I truly appreciate it, because I appreciate all the help that I can get. But again, So again, thank you all for coming up. AD, even though I say women under 30, you've been 30 once, right? So next time, it doesn't matter if you're over 30, you want to join the conversation. But again, join me July 16th for another great discussion on marriage and why it's important and all things relationships, how to attract and date and marry high value men. So until next time.